regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cathedral City. We will now come to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Carnevale, if you would please lead the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please stand. Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance
just to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right. Tonight, Councilmember Ross, if you would take care of the invocation moment of reflection.
Well, tonight I'm hoping it will be a moment of hope. And so I'll start with a big old Happy New Year for everybody. I've seen some of you, but most of you I haven't, and lots of you on joining us that aren't on the screen. Happy New Year to you all. I don't need to remind any of you what a tough year we've just put behind us. And this one has started out more than a little rocky too. It's been hard for many of us to find anything to be hopeful about. But as we move forward, this is exactly what I'm suggesting each of us work towards doing. You may not hear it enough, but each one of us on this Zoom meeting care about you and your family. We think about you every day. We're not just pictures on your laptops talking away. We're your city council members and city leaders who dedicate our time and concern to making sure that this city and your lives are as good as they can be. And we hope we're making a difference. A great American statesman once said, "Hope is not blind optimism. It's not ignoring the enormity of the task ahead or the roadblocks that stand in our path. It's not sitting on the sidelines or shirking from a fight. Hope is that thing inside us that insists, despite all evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it and to work for it and to fight for it. Hope is the belief that destiny will not be written for us, but by us, by the men and women who are not content to settle for the world as it is, who have the courage to remake the world as it should be." So it is with this hope in mind, I ask you to join me in silence, where together we can consider for just a moment what it is we have to be hopeful for in 2021. Thank you very much, and I hope this is a great year for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for those words. All right, City Clerk, next up is the roll call.
Councilmember Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Carnevale.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
Here.
Mayor Gregory.
Here. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the agenda finalization. Are there any changes to our agenda tonight?
I have none, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else flagging me down, our next item on the agenda is the statement of participation, which is not by the city clerk. I will go over it, and then we will go into public comment for items that are not on the agenda tonight. But we want to welcome everyone for joining us via the web, local channel 17, and via Zoom. We will now be taking public comment from any members of the public on items and topics not appearing on our regular agenda tonight. The posted agenda outlined the process to join our video conference on Zoom, either using an internet connected device or by telephone. If any members of the public are with us on Zoom and have a comment they wish to make on an item not on the agenda, please use the raise hand function found in the participant menu at the bottom of your screen. For some devices, the raise hand function becomes visible once you tap on your screen. For those joining by telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. The clerk will call on you when it's your turn to speak. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you. Do we have anyone raising their hand?
I have a Mr. Finch that is would like to speak for public comment, and I have transferred him over, so he should be able to speak.
Excellent. Mr. Finch, if you would unmute yourself, and you can turn on your camera if you like or not. Your 3 minutes is beginning. Mr. Finch, are you there? Mr. Finch?
It looks like maybe we dropped him. So aside from it looks like maybe he got disconnected. I have no other hands raised at this time.
All right. Since we have no other public comments on items not on the agenda, will the clerk read the consent agenda?
Mayor, did you want to do council reports first?
Oh, this is a lot harder than it looks. Yes, I would like to start with council reports, and we could start with Council Member Ross. You're on mute.
Some wish I would stay muted, but okay. I have had an exciting start being a member of council. There's always something meaningful to work on. I've been assigned to a few committees. I'm the lead on the Coachella Valley Association of Governments Energy and Environmental Resource Committee. I'm an alternate with Councilmember Lamb as the lead on Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy. And Councilmember Carnevale and I will be spearheading Senate Bill 1383 for Cathedral City, which will initiate a program of capturing organic waste in our homes and also making sure that less usable food is going into our landfills. Each of these committees work towards a cleaner environment and a reduction of methane gas into our atmosphere. I consider this vital work, and I'm honored to be a part. Of course, we all serve on the League of California Cities. In addition to this, I've met with several agency directors, have taken meetings with developers, department heads, and several constituents. But without a doubt, the highlight of my first month has been the opportunity to distribute the personal protection equipment to the small and medium-sized businesses in District Number 2. Stone James coordinated our receipt of part of the $1 million in personal protection equipment that the Valley shared through the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership free to us. We received a large supply of important health protection, face masks, face shields, and bottles of hand sanitizers. And with our businesses struggling, it was so wonderful to be able to help. I walked door to door throughout most all of my district until I ran out of my 5th SUV load of equipment. While social distancing, I hand-delivered over 30,000 pieces. Businesses were so appreciative. One man had tears running down his cheeks, I think from the amazement that anyone, was reaching out to help his business, to help him. He was reusing paper masks and had 2 squirts left of hand sanitizer. It was both important work in protecting our businesses and our communities, but on a personal level, it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had interacting directly with human beings. Bringing relief to fear brought by a pandemic is amazing. So once again, I want to thank the voters of Cathedral City for allowing me to serve you. It truly is an honor.
Thank you, Council Member. Next up will be Council Member Lamb.
There, thank you very much. Hope, what a wonderful invocation. Thank you, Councilwoman Morales. It was wonderful. Just a reminder, as always, first I want to thank Mayor Gregory for jumping in there and doing the 9/15 COVID testing, because that has opened up, and I'm sure he'll talk more at length about it. But not backing down, being an advocate for our own health, that is absolutely what we have to do. And I was sharing with Councilwoman Ross during the break, my husband's cousin, he was diagnosed 16 days ago with COVID, and he passed away, 4 days ago. So it's getting close to home. And as much as we can do to protect ourselves, wear our masks and socially distance, that's what we need to do. I'm looking forward to the goal setting conference. That is going to be January 30th on a Saturday. And 2 of the topics that I talked with Mayor Gregory about that I really begin an advocate for is to build community and ways that we can do that. And secondly, to expand our opportunities for civic engagement for our elementary school children. There's never a more critical time to build citizenry and respect for what we do here. And I had a chance to chat with Sue Townsley. She is also our head commissioner for the Public Arts Commission about something working with a civics lesson and public arts and taking an opportunity for the sculptures in the park. So we're going to be working on that. I belong to the Cathedral City Rotary, the noon Rotary meeting, and their 2 primary focus areas are polio eradication and human trafficking. And that is the human trafficking issue is substantive for our valley, and I did not know that. I participated in the National League of Cities Mayors Roundtable, and the focus was on public education. And many of the cities across the United States are not in the fantastic shape that Palm Springs Unified School District is. And I want to have a shout out to the, Sandra Lyons and her whole team at Palm Springs Unified School District, because with their tech depots, they have really made this critical, horrible situation palatable and workable for the students in our community. Then the League of California Cities, Councilwoman Ross talked about that. And the very beginning of that presentation was about the governor's budget. And we were given an access to the specifics about what funding is available. And one is $750 million to extend the home key for homelessness, $8.5 million to expand state-approved construction apprenticeships, and $1 billion towards forest management to address the horrible fire dangers that we experience here in California. As she said, I'm the Mountain Conservancy, and that was an interesting topic because their big project is the Whitewater Preserve, and there are 3 focus areas. One is going to be building visitors facilities, second is critical habitats, and the third is a levee. And for those of you like myself who have lived here a long, long time, it was the Whitewater Trout Farm, so it was great fun. But the Cathedral City Senior Center, I'm going to be meeting with Jeff Corwin, and we're going to be interviewed. KESQ, I believe, is going to be the station that's going to do it, about the art program. And the council, thanks to great support from the community and the senior center and the artist herself, who put together this video. It's been a very successful program, so I can't wait to brag about that. Tomorrow I'm going to be participating, or at least reviewing, being part of the Zoom meeting, the Inland Area Economics Summit. And I wanted to shout out to Patsy. Patsy has her dinner with Patsy. She is suspending it for the month of January and going to start back in February. But there was a wonderful article in our Desert Sun talking about the $40,000 they have raised for our nonprofits here in Cathedral City, thanks to her efforts and generosity. Resident concerns, I addressed those: illegal parking, vehicle tampering, and the last one was the use of the amphitheater. And once the final construction is done on the sound system, the amphitheater will be open for the grass area for public use, not as an entertainment venue, but just as another greenbelt area. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Member. Next up is Council Member Carnevale.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to welcome staff back and council back and all our constituents. Hope you had a good new year. And here we go with the new year. CBAG public safety meeting was canceled this year, so I have nothing to report. We won't meet till next February. We had a lot of cancellations due to the holidays and COVID a lot, but we should be back up and running come February. I attended and I got to thank the mayor for putting me on this committee on vector control. It kind of hit me a surprise at first, and because I really hadn't been following it too much. But I had an orientation with vector control last week, and the services that they provide is really, really exciting. And these little things that used to bite me on the ankle or the elbows, I used to call them pesky little things. They're called a jet tie. There's millions of them out there, but they're only there during the summer. But there's so much that this group does for the valley here, and I'm going to be really excited bringing you back how we could prevent all kinds of illnesses that with these mosquitoes and all the services they do provide. And last night I was sworn in as a trustee on the vector control, so I'm excited on that. And then I attended via Zoom. All my meetings, of course, are Zoom. Cathedral City Housing Element Update. It's still a challenge. It's all about time and money. We have the space, but is getting it done is a real challenge. And then Councilwoman Ross and I attended Lift to Rise Stability. There was just some good information on there today about committing are pledging our commitment to their group there. And this morning, I also attended the League of California Cities Homeless Roundtable, and there was about 132 other council people and mayors on there, and city managers on there, and I enjoy listening to them because I always hope I can learn more stuff and be more aware of what's going on. But I got to be honest with you, what we're doing here in Cathedral City, what we're doing here in the Valley, we're still leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of cities. And what we're doing is fabulous with our police department, and our paramedic and fire department. So I was really excited to see how well we're doing there. And then, the good news, but it's Newsom is supposed to be kicking down. Let me read here: $5.6 billion to homeless, and about 1.4 billion is going to cities with over 200,000 or more, and then 1.2 billion for cities under that amount. So hopefully, we're going to be getting some of that money kicked into Riverside, and we can start putting more money towards the homeless, and then a promise of 500 million from Newsom on low-income housing. Now, this hasn't hit the floor yet, but hopefully within a week or two, this will be passed and move forward. So, of course, we can always use more money for homeless. And then today I was able to ride with Officer Powers and Brooks and did about a 2-hour ride along. And I got to tell you, from the last time that I was out there, I think Nancy and I were out there looking at all the lots and the encampments. We went to the same route that we went there, and there was no encampments. All of our bridges, underneath our bridges, are 100% clean. There's no encampments underneath any of the bridges. That means there's no needles and stuff that if the rains come, it's going to be pushing it down. We went underneath the Ramon Bridge. They've done a beautiful job. Pretty much they pushed them over. They didn't push them over, but they have such a strong presence out there, these young men, that they decided, hey, we're going to go to the Palm Springs side. We're not going to stay here in Cathedral City. But they're doing a fabulous job out there. Having a little bit of trouble with outreach program right now. I'm going to be reaching out to Tom Cox and Tom Kirk to see how this program that we all jumped into about having our outreach program through CBAG. So I'm going to be researching that, and I'll be able to report back to you there. A lot of the problems is this COVID. CVRM closed down. Martha's shut down because of the COVID. Now, if they pick somebody up, they just can't take them to a shelter now. They got to get COVID tested first. So a lot of issues there. A little bit of disappointment. A lot of the new laws with the homeless break-in laws that are just cited and released. So it's a little frustrating on that end, but hopefully we can get that improved. Let me see here. And working with Councilwoman Ross, we had a local builder and developer had some issues, and we spent a lot of hours last couple of weeks working with them. And I think we got their message and we brought it to council, and we'll be discussing that tonight. But it was a pleasure working with Councilwoman Ross. She gets right in there and digs right on in. And what else do I have here? Also, pass out the mask and all, and I left my card every time I put out masks or sanitizers. And I've been getting some recalls. I said, hey, if you ever need any more, let me know. So I've got some more, and I've been taking them back out. And this is the last thing I got here. I'm going to try to put this up here. Joanne Kinnan and myself did a little project. I took it on my own self to do this here. But, I've always been, this council and the city's always supported our fire department and police department. So I went and made up had a bunch of these signs made up. Hopefully you can see them there. And we support Cathedral City Police and Fire Department. And I have enough of these for all of our council members to come by my restaurant, pick a bunch up, pass them out to constituents. Let's show this community how much we support our police department, fire department, paramedics, and all that. So feel free to come by, pick as much you want. Chief Muir, if you want some for your fire engines, we can paste them all over your trucks if you like. I'll drop some off at your office along with the police department too. But come by, pick them up at the restaurant. I got them right up front there. And that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. It's all the great things that you're involved in. We know you're going to do great things at the Vector Control. All that you do for the homeless and the sign program is just wonderful. So thank you so much. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, it's a hard act to follow, but you're next.
Thank you. Thank you. I know everyone has been quite busy. Well, first of all, I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas, and I wish to everyone has a Happy New Year. Even though we haven't met much for council meetings since early December, we as council members, we all have been very busy with Zoom meetings and also attending a few events. Now, since last we met, I had a chance to visit many of our local restaurants. And by doing so, it brought me almost to tears. It was sad to see a lot of business owners that when I walked in to give them face masks and asked them to see how they were doing, it almost brought me to tears to see their long and sad faces. And when I asked them how they were doing, their response, they were holding back tears. And the response was, we're just barely surviving. We are in debt. We're out of savings. We're late in our payments, and we're losing everything. It was extremely sad. I offered them the assistance that our city will be providing shortly. Unfortunately, that assistance does not pay for rent, bills, nor does it pay for employee salaries. So that was very sad. But I did pass to them, I did provide to them face mask and also sanitizer and face shields. They were very grateful, and I gave them the information of Stone James in case there was anything our city can do. But I visited many restaurants within our city, and all of them had the same thing in common: long, sad faces. It's very sad what this pandemic has brought to us, and there's no end in sight for these people. A lot of these people have actually talked to and brought in retired family members to work for free in order to make ends meet and to help their business not shut down. Now, many of these businesses will probably not survive and shut down in the near future. It is very sad. A lot of these businesses are also ready to define the state mandates. They're ready to disobey them, and they're ready to open because they are so desperate financially they cannot afford to stay closed any longer or much longer. Now, I happen to actually agree with some of these businesses if they do disobey, even though that I'm not supposed to, but I don't know what to say to them. When you see their faces that these people are broke and they don't know what else to do, it is really unfortunate and it's sad. And there's no scientific data that supports the restaurants, mainly in personal care for businesses, was causing a lot of this or actually spreading the virus. And I'm actually in support of them reopening with all the safety protocols that have been issued by the CDC and also our state. Now, I wish there was something else that we can do for these businesses. Unfortunately, we do not have the revenue or the budget to actually assist them like other cities have. But if there's anything that comes to mind, please let me know. I can go back and talk to these businesses that desperately need our help. And when it comes to also to supporting our businesses, I've talked about supporting our local businesses in the past. And one of the reasons is we don't think about it, but on social media, someone made some comments that completely make sense that we don't think about. Now, when you think about Target and a lot of these big box stores, they're big box stores that bring big revenue to our city. But you don't think about all the small businesses that actually support our city. They're the ones that when you need funds for a field trip, for a school field trip, for a soccer team, to sponsor a soccer team, his baseball team, a high school event, our local small businesses are the ones that actually do step up to the plate. And for instance, Carnivale, he does so much for local businesses. I see him all over. He's donating food, donating his time. That's what local businesses are all about. Now, when all this is behind us and we're allowed and all these businesses reopen, let's focus on actually supporting our local businesses. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I think all of us share your frustration. And thankfully, we are going to hear a little bit today on some progress on a small program that we're able to put forward. And it wouldn't surprise me if in that presentation, there's more discussion of things to come as far as some of the assistance available to local small businesses. But I know we all agree it's not enough. It's a real struggle for them. So, thank you for all that you do to reach out to them. And with everyone working together, we can get over this hump. I think we all just have to have faith, and with the vaccines combined, and continue to work on getting those rolled out locally and getting our economy back open. That's really going to be the answer. But thank you for your comments and for all you do to reach out to help them. So
thank you.
Well, like everyone else, I did have a break, and so I want to say Happy New Year to all of you and everyone watching. We are into our new year. It's hard to believe our last meeting was December 9th, so over a month ago. So while there was somewhat of a break, there were many activities going on, as already been discussed. Most of us were involved in delivery of personal protective equipment. Thank you to Stone James and to CBEP for allowing us to do that and to be involved. It's already been mentioned about some league meetings and training that many of us participated in. I did attend a meeting of the Desert Community Energy. We're technically still on that board through the end of June. So they did formally receive and acknowledge our resolution that will be ending our relationship with Desert Community Energy. So I want to let everybody know that did get delivered and on time and did get received. I know Councilmember Lamb is helping with the backup while we're still in there, and I believe she quietly observed that meeting. She always appreciate that she's great about keeping up on what's going on, even when she's the alternate, as many of us do, and try to make sure that we're ready to step in at any time. So I think that's what makes us strong, that we're able to do that. And then earlier today, I did represent the city on the Riverside County Transportation Commission. A lot of talk about the budget and adjusting the current year budget. A little bit of good news. We weren't able to adjust the budget and the one looking for next year up to where it was initially set or where it was potentially going to go. But they were adjusted up somewhat, which does help with the availability of funds for projects. And some of that actually will help with some projects that our city engineer, I'm sure, is going to find great uses for, already has here in the city. So it's always good when the numbers look good. It's still very tenuous. As was already noted, a lot of businesses are hurting, but there are segments of the business community, particularly the large businesses, the internet-based businesses, that are doing well. So those numbers are starting to tick up. One thing, it's kind of interesting but one thing that hurts the tax revenue, people don't think about it that much, is when gasoline is depressed, because people do buy gasoline, and actually the driving, of course, is much less than it was before. So that's it is COVID related, but it's interesting that the drop in price in gas and the number of miles that have been reduced, while it's so great for the environment, it does unfortunately affect the tax dollar. So that does touch all of us. So as has been mentioned, we do have a great opportunity here in Cathedral City, and it's still going on through Friday. I know I saw some comments that said, why are you guys talking about it when it's too late to actually participate? And that's just not true. We have COVID testing at Northgate Church, and it's for everyone. Everyone really should periodically be tested, even if you're being careful, because most of us, although we are being careful, have to go out and interact with the public a little bit, have to get groceries and those types of things, do have some interaction with family and friends, even if it is distanced. And it's a good idea to be tested, so you'll know whether you're exposed. So thanks to Chris Parman and Supervisor Perez helping promote that site. There's been testing going on at Northgate, and it will continue through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's no cost. You do have to sign up, and they will ask you some questions, including if you have insurance, but there's no cost to you. And if anyone is interested in that, you can go to a website, lhi.care, or call 888-634-1123. And don't try to write that all down, because you can find that and all kinds of information on our discovercathedralcity.com site. So I encourage people to go to discovercathedralcity.com, and you're going to see information about that testing. I checked earlier this afternoon to see if there were available test spots, and it told me there were spots open even tomorrow. So if anyone is interested, it continues 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow and Friday. And if it's successful, I'm sure we'll be working to get that back again. And our thanks to Northgate for being willing to be one of the sites, and former Mayor Kathy DeRosa for all her help in securing that site. All right, so we do have a couple of things upcoming. Next Monday is Martin Luther King holiday, so I know it is a city holiday. City Hall is closed anyways, but if you are expecting something from City Hall, there may be a short delay, and we certainly want our well-deserving employees to enjoy that holiday and remember what it's all about. We will be participating in a virtual event on the Sunday before, and I know the City Council has issued a proclamation on behalf of that. Then next Tuesday, you don't want to miss our next City Hall at Your Corner. It's a virtual event, and I will be attending that event with our new council member, Nancy Ross. So that is next Tuesday. It's at 11 a.m. You do need to sign up to get all the information and to get the link sent to you. But again, you can do that at discovercathedralcity.com. All that information is there. That will be next Tuesday at 11 a.m. All right. So now, usually it's been my practice, at least personally, to try to focus on Cathedral City and events that have a direct effect on Cathedral City. But I did want to close out. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't join in and recognize the impacts of the riot and basically acts of insurrection that took place a week ago just today at our nation's capital. So as all public officials, we took an oath to uphold the Constitution, including the Constitution of the United States. And I know my fellow council members join me in strongly condemning violence and the violence that took place there at the Capitol. Because while we have and we always will, of course, support public discourse and the ability for people to transparently air their grievances, what happened at the Capitol was an attack not just on the building, not even just on the people that were there, but it was an attack on all of us and on our democracy. So I think, without dwelling on that, there's been a lot said and a lot more will be said. And to me, it's not a political thing. It's an American thing. It's a patriotic thing. So, I think we just need to remember that words do matter, and that while we disagree at times, that does not make my fellow American, the person that's disagreeing with me, my enemy. We're just disagreeing. That's what America is all about. In this nation and in this city, it's important that we work together because we have important work to do. So I just want to close by saying, let's always remember that we are in this together. And with that, let's get to work. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we're done with our comments. So I believe we are ready to proceed to the consent agenda. So if the city clerk could read the consent agenda.
Yes, Mayor. So item number 3A is minute approval of November 24th, 2020, December 2nd, 2020, December 8th, 2020, December 9th, 2020. Item number 3B is to receive and file payment of claims and demands for December 2020. Item number 3C is to reaffirm the appointment of Councilmember Mark Carnevale to the Coachella Valley Mosquito and Vector Control Board of Trustees for a 2-year term expiring on December 31st, 2022. Item number 3D is to appoint Greg Gregorian to serve on the Finance Advisory Committee to fill an unexpired term continuing through June 30th, 2023. And item number 3E is to approve contracts with FM3 and Lou Edwards Group and a budget amendment in the amount of $195,000 for the March 2nd, 2021 special election. And that concludes the consent agenda.
All right, thank you. Does council have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Do we have any public comments on the consent agenda? If anyone is joining us by Zoom and wishes to make a comment on the consent agenda, they could raise their hand now or press *9 if they're on the telephone.
I see no hands, Mayor.
All right, if there's no public comments, I will entertain a motion.
Make the motion
I'll
on the
make-
consent agenda.
Motion
I
by
I'll second the motion.
Councilmember Carnevale, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez. Will you please have a vote?
Councilmember Ross,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Carnevale,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez, Mayor Pro Tem
Might
Gutierrez.
be froze.
Oh, is he frozen?
Looks like it. Or he's sleeping.
Ah. Mayor Gregory.
Yes.
So the motion carries with all ayes, but we'll just have Councilmember Gutierrez is absent for this vote.
All right. Well, thank you. And if there's no objection, let's take a short break of just a few minutes. You can turn your camera and sound off if you wish, council members, but if you would stay, and let's try to see if we can get our council member back on. So we'll just be a short pause of a few minutes here.
And I don't know if he can hear me or not, but normally
Okay, so the motion carries with all ayes.
All right. Thank you very much. We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move on to our legislative agenda. The first item is resolution in support of Measure B. City Manager?
Thank you, members of the council. As you know, Measure B is the referendum vote, which you all referred to the voters by your vote on December 2nd. It is appropriate if the council desires to take a position on that referendum. Staff, in conjunction with the city attorney's office, actually they did most of the work, I have to say, has prepared a resolution for you. It reflects some of the information that you've heard from the public throughout the year, as well as some of the information that was included in your study session report today. So I would ask if Eric Vale has anything that you would like to add to that summary.
Thank you, Charlie. Just a few comments, council. As I think all of the council knows, the city cannot use public funds or resources to advocate for either the passage of or the defeat of a ballot measure. However, state law does expressly allow the city council to adopt a position for or against ballot measures. We're recommending that you adopt an official position supporting Measure B. That means you want the original ordinance that you approved back in September 842 to pass. That's the ordinance that winds down STVRs that are outside of homeowners association areas. It adds more stringent operational provisions, and it clarifies that home sharing is allowed, among other changes that you made. State law does allow you to state the reasons why you would support the measure. That's what we've done in the staff report, and the report that Charlie and his department heads gave earlier in the study session lays out all of the factual background for that, in addition to the many reports that the city manager has done discussing the work of the task force and the recommendations that were originally incorporated into the ordinance itself. And so tonight, in good conscience, you can adopt, if you so desire, an official position supporting Measure B and know that the city is not only being legal in doing so, but that the city can also then, following state-approved educational measures, to tell the public that you do support Measure B and what the reasons are for that. If you have any questions related to what's in the staff report or the extent of our abilities in this, Milo would be happy to address those. Thank you.
All right, so if you have any questions of the city manager or city attorney that would be appropriate now, then we're going to do public comments, and then we'll come back for any comments and further action. So Councilmember Ross, did you have a question?
I do. So what you're talking about now, how does that differentiate from the ballot statement?
There's a question in the ballot that will be printed in the ballot. That's just what the ballot is. Then there can be arguments for and against. The time limit has since run to submit arguments and rebuttals for and against. Those are printed and put in the ballot. And you'll remember that the city council stated that it was not going to have council officially either do an argument for or against. This is different than an argument that goes in the ballot. This is a resolution that the council passes, just stating its official position. It does not end up being printed in the ballot statement. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Ross?
But it does post arguments.
It is not an argument. It is a position with reasons supporting the position. We couldn't, for example, go out and argue that people should vote for or against the measure. But we can state that the council supports the measure and supply the reasons why.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, other questions? If not, then let's open it up for public comment. If you are watching us on Zoom or either using an internet connected device or telephone, if you would raise your hand or dial *9 if you're on the telephone, then we will see that and we will call on you. City Clerk. You're muted.
I am. No, I'm not. I had one hand raised so far, and that was Danny Lee. And I have switched him over, so he should be able to speak.
All right, Mr. Lee, we see you. Welcome. Your 3 minutes.
Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, I congratulate and support the City Council in introducing this resolution. After extensive study, public hearings, and much comment from residents, the city voted to support the concerns of full-time residents by introducing Ordinance 842. The ordinance strikes a balance between the essential need for safe and quiet neighborhoods for the full-time residents of the city and support for the business of short-term vacation rentals. In doing so, it encourages longer-term rentals at reasonable prices for our local families and residents. These families and residents include the people who build and serve this community. The ordinance supports teachers, police officers, firefighters, nurses, and the many local workers who seek housing that is close to their work, is safe for their families, and provides a quiet and secure place to raise children. I am alarmed at the tone of the publications from the mostly out-of-city property speculators that oppose this measure. They appear to have considerable resources to buy advertising and to circulate misinformation. Local residents are unable to find out the names of individuals behind this effort because the listed sponsors of the ballot committee are 2 organizations that do not reveal the origin of their donations. We cannot tell if large corporations like Expedia and Airbnb are behind this campaign, as they were in the same campaign in Palm Springs. But we do know that the real estate industry is using the same misleading information. Ordinance 842 does not ban short-term vacation rentals. The 114 properties in Desert Princess can continue to operate as long as their HOA wants them to. The city will continue to issue STVR permits for Desert Princess and other HOAs. so that the number of units there can increase. One city council member has suggested that they would welcome developers building STVR-focused developments with HOAs that approve this use, showing the council's commitment to the continuation of this business model in appropriately zoned areas of the city. The distortions circulated by a small gang of wealthy speculators, most of whom undoubtedly reside outside our city, cannot be allowed to go unchallenged. The full-time residents of our city, the true locals here, do not want whole house short-term vacation rentals in our R1 and R2 zones. We stand with our elected representatives in supporting a yes vote on Measure B. I speak as the president of the Cathedral City Residents Yes on B Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Okay, do we have anyone else wishing to make a public comment?
I see no other hands raised, Mayor.
All right, well, thank you. And we will put it back to the council for comments and action. Anyone have a comment they wish to make?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve this resolution.
We have a motion on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
I'll second.
I said,
Okay.
it's okay.
A second by Councilmember Carnavale. You know, I did want to just point out, when I look at this, it's not, when you actually look at the resolution, it's not lengthy. And one might say it makes an argument, but I tend to concur that it's really just stating a fact. And the fact is that we considered a number of ills, if you want to call them that, or issues that we then very carefully, with a lot of help, including a lot of citizen help and input from all over the place, crafted with staff and others, this ordinance 842. So to me, it's factual. We are stating factually what we considered and what we thought was important and what we thought, you know, was going to resolve this problem in the best way. So I certainly do support it. I think it does. Again, one's going to argue if they don't agree with what I'm calling a fact, but I think we did a really thorough job, and not just us, but staff and the citizen groups involved, and the many comments. So I certainly support it. So with that, unless somebody else has a comment, we do have a motion second on the floor. I would call for a vote.
Councilmember Ross,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Carnavale,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez,
Yes.
Mayor Gregory.
Yes.
The motion carries, all ayes.
Thank you very much. All right, item B, the next item on our agenda is an introduction and first reading by title only and waiving a further reading on an ordinance of the City Council of Cathedral City pertaining to the CalPERS Board of Administration City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This will be actually, I think, the third time that you have actually been asked to approve this item. It was approved as a cost sharing with the employees in the AFSCME bargaining unit when you approved their MOU back in September, I think it was. You also approved at your previous meeting in December the notice of intent to adopt this ordinance, which approves the amended contract with CalPERS. Their process is very prescribed and very strict, and so we have to follow that, which requires, and will require one more vote yet at your next meeting when you will have to give second reading to the ordinance. But since you've been over this a number of times already, I don't think there's any need to go into any further detail, and the recommendation from staff is that you introduce and provide first reading by title only and waive for further reading of this ordinance.
Thank you very much. Any questions by council of staff? Seeing none, are there any public comments? Anyone in the public that's able to do so via Zoom, if you would indicate now?
I see no hands, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. We'll turn it back to the council for further discussion or action. All right, does anybody want to move this forward?
I'll
So
move
moved.
to approve this motion, please. To move item 6B.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Councilmember Lamb. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ross,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Carnavale,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez,
Yes.
Mayor Gregory.
Yes.
Motion carries all ayes. And I'll go ahead and read the title of the ordinance if that is okay with you, Mayor.
Thank you.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cathedral City authorizing an amendment to the contract between the City Council of the City of Cathedral City and the Board of Administration of the California Public Employees Retirement System.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to item C. Item C is an ordinance modifying the composition of the Cannabis Task Force that we are asking to be introduced and waive reading beyond the title and provide first reading by title only. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This item you discussed 2 times recently as well when I presented the report of the Cannabis Task Force, which I think it was at the November meeting. And then at your December study session, we discussed alternatives for amending the makeup of the task force. And you directed us to come back with an ordinance that would implement option 2, and that's what this one does. It will establish that the membership of the task force is to be chaired by the city manager or designee and is to include 3 members who are owners or managers of cannabis businesses in Cathedral City and 3 members who are residents. And we are in the process of putting up information to solicit additional members. We do have a number of vacancies, and assuming that you all approve this, we will move forward with that. So this is ready for first reading, and I think it reflects the direction that was provided at the study session.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Council, do you have any questions of staff? Seeing none, we will move to public comments. If anyone is with us on Zoom and wishes to make a public comment, if you would raise your hand right now, or if you're on the telephone, dial *9.
I see no hands raised, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. We'll turn it back to council for any comments or if anyone's ready to take action.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Ross. Do we have a second?
I'll second
Second.
that, Mayor.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ross,
Aye.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Carnavale,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez,
Yes.
Mayor Gregory.
Yes.
The motion carries all ayes. And at this time, I'll go ahead and read the title of the ordinance, if that's okay.
Yes.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of Cathedral City, California, repealing section 5.88.125, Cathedral City Cannabis Task Force of chapter 5.88, Cannabis Regulations, and adding chapter 2.32, Cannabis Task Force, to title 2, Administration and Personnel of the Cathedral City Municipal Code.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us to item D, which is a Public Arts Commission approval request regarding Swiss cheese in Panorama Park. That sounds interesting. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Stone James is going to present this item. He is the staff liaison to the Arts Commission. And actually, well, I'm not going to say any more because I'll just give his report if I do that. So, Stone.
Thank you, Charlie. Mayor Pro Tem and fellow council members, thank you for the opportunity to go over a recommendation from our Public Arts Commission. And hopefully you see my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, great. It's so much more of an interesting discussion if you can. So back in 2014, Simi Daba and his wife, Swiss cheese sculpture. And this sculpture was placed in front of City Hall, in front of the police department. And the public was able to enjoy the Swiss cheese in that location for approximately 4 years until 2018. The sculpture is a pretty unique sculpture. It is about 8 feet tall, 8 feet wide, and weighs approximately 1,000 pounds. Simi Daba is an interesting sculptor. He is in his 90s. He has two offices, one up in the high desert and one in Los Angeles. And so he has works that have been distributed throughout the United States. And so since its placement into storage in 2018, the Public Arts
Can I
Commission.
stop you for just a second? So we've got music and laughter and stuff going on. Are other people hearing this as well?
Yes, I'm hearing it.
Yes.
So somebody must have a device on and it's distracting for sure.
I did hear some bluegrass music in the background, and that is not mine.
All right.
Mhm.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
Stone.
so this sculptures, the Public Arts Commission has been looking for a new location, and they have tried over the last several years to try to finally find a fitting place for it. And most recently they have identified a place in Panorama Park that is quite barren and that would be ideally suited for this Swiss cheese sculpture. And so as the staff, as the council knows, back last year, the Passages project was approved, and that's going to be located on the northwest corner of the Panorama Park. And in recent discussions that I've had with the artist, he is currently building it. And so my hope is within the next 30, 60, 90 days, we're going to be able to install that beautiful work of art. And so this location previously had a tree in it. And while the engineering department of Public Works is working on finding a better location for that tree, there is a real barren spot. And so the Public Arts Commission thought this would be ideally suited for this location. We've checked with the engineering department, and if we were to mount this at a 45-degree angle to the intersection, that would not obstruct any line of sights for either folks on Caladata Road making a right turn or folks making a left turn. And so with that, the Public Arts Commission respectfully requests the City Council to authorize the construction of a concrete foundation and to mount the Swiss cheese sculpture using art and public place funds in an amount not to exceed $5,000.
All right. Does council have any questions of staff? And maybe
I have a question.
Let's stop the screen sharing so we can see everyone.
You bet.
There we go. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Stone, thank you for the presentation. Will there be any lighting to this sculpture?
Yeah, thank you for asking. No, there would not be. This was one that the Public Arts Commission felt like uplighting was not necessary, and that it also would just increase the cost somewhat substantially.
Okay. Now, will the work be also completed by a Public Works department?
With the installation, yes, it would.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
If I might, no, it's not Public Works, it's the Facilities Department that will be installing that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Who's next? No other questions. So, Stone, I mean, we have the advantage of having this already been placed, and so either you or Charlie or Tammy, somebody may know. I mean, it appears to be a little sharp on the edges and maybe climbable, but sometimes that's really hard to tell from photos. But it looks like we had it out for a number of years at City Hall. Did we have any issues like that?
We did not specifically have any issues. You know, that's always a concern when you have anything out in a park particularly, but we did not have any issues when it was located here.
Okay. Councilmember Carnevale.
Yeah, thank you. I just would like more of a comment. I really, I have art is in the eyes of the beholder, right? But I really like this piece. I think it's a perfect spot for it. And I think it kind of acts as probably like a climb gym for some kids. I can see some kids probably climbing on it as long as they don't hurt on it. I think it's not that high, but I think it's really cool. And I got to commend Sue Townsley for putting this together, because I think, and Stone as well. But that's a nice piece. So I'm happy to see it going to that spot.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I might go climb it too. I mean, it looks like some fun.
Well, we're not.
Well, let me make clear, we do not want to encourage people to climb on that. So
They're going to do it. You know, I mean, kids are going to see that and have some fun with it. So, but I'm not, I'll take it back. I'm not encouraging anyone to climb on it. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So, you know, it does seem to be a very dry corner. In fact, I remember when we were trying to put a few trees in, we did put a little tree there, and it was an issue because Public Works was having to water it by hand, the parks people, and I don't think it did very well. So it is probably needs something other than a tree. And I actually concur with the no need for lighting, where the other one is actually on a busier street. These corners are both neighborhood type streets, and there is some light there from the tennis courts when people are using it. But it does seem at least a much better use of that corner than continuing to put a tree just because it's so dry. So Panorama is in my district. I certainly support beautifying the parks in all the districts. So I'm supportive. Are there any other questions or comments? Did we get public comment yet? All right.
We have one hand here.
Okay, yes, if you are in the public in our Zoom meetings and you want to make a comment, please raise your hand, and it does appear we have one, so City Clerk.
So this is Danny Lee, who wishes to speak on this item, and I've moved him over, so he should be able to speak.
Danny Lee, we can see you on our moved over, but we can't see you or hear you yet. Are you there?
I'm here, yeah. My camera isn't apparently, but anyway, just a quick comment which echoes really what you said, Mr. Mayor. And I'm a little bit concerned just looking at the picture, but until I see it in real life, you know, I'm chair of the Parks Commission. This is the first time we've seen this. So we haven't had a chance to give any feedback on suitability for a park location for this sculpture. And it worries me a little bit because we do have jungle gym exercise equipment in Panorama. And Councilman Carnevale is correct that what's going to happen is kids are going to discover it and climb on it. Right on top of that sculpture is a point. Whenever I see a point, I worry about safety. You know, if a kid's climbing over that and they get stuck, hang up on their clothes, they fall, they're going to be falling on a hard surface. We don't have a play area underneath it. I think that should be considered in your discussions of placing a sculpture like this in a park setting. But anyway, that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. So it does beg question, Stone James. Was there some discussion in the Arts Commission about that issue?
About children climbing on it, we felt that based on previous discussions of placing art within parks, that if it was done on a corner of a park and certainly away from the climbing gym, climbing area, that it wouldn't really be a magnet, especially with parks that have got dedicated climbing gyms, which are a lot more comprehensive than this. And so well, not we, but I think the commission collectively felt like putting a piece of art on that exterior boundary would decrease the likelihood of the kids climbing on it.
Right. And is there some reason why this wasn't at least shared with the Parks Commission, since it is a placement in the parks?
So that was that has been a developing discussion in terms of the interaction between the Public Arts Commission and the Parks Commission in terms of developing that relationship. There was a concern that the public arts did not want to be construed as trying to intrude upon the parks activities. And then similarly, the parks are great at the parks, but there was a concern that the parks, their expertise is not within the art. And so there has been discussion about bringing the two committees together, but not necessarily intertwining them to increase just have people going into other people's lanes of traffic.
If I may, Mayor.
Yes.
I would say in the future, it would be advisable when the Arts Commission, I know it adds a little bit of time to the approval process, and that's always a concern, but I think it would be advisable for them to touch base with the Parks Commission on location of anything in the parks, just so that everybody's on the same page.
I agree.
Thank you. Councilmember Carnevale.
Yeah, I kind of kicked the can there and opened up a little can of worms there, but I feel as much as I like it, and as much as I think that's a good place for it, I really think the park should weigh in on this. Maybe we should just discuss this again, or if the mayor wants to continue to go forward with it. I would have some concerns. Safety is all we always talk about, safety of our residents here and the children. Maybe it'd be we could use it somewhere else. It's just a thought. If you wanted to take that advice with that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if you're asking me, I appreciate the comments, and I'm of course open to other comments, but it kind of goes back to what my original question was. We have an advantage in this piece that we don't have in other pieces, in that it was installed, and my understanding is it was installed for a number of years right outside City Hall. And, although that's not a playground, it's pretty near an area where kids play. So a lot of times it's without actually being able to look at it, that experience is pretty valuable. But I'm open to more discussion. It's just one of those things. We do seem to kick a lot of these art projects around a lot and ask a lot of questions, which is great, but sometimes we don't move them forward, and there's a lot of frustration there too. So, but I do think it's worthy to note that in the future, we really would like to see, and it just makes sense that, when art's in the park, that the Parks Commission is involved, or if the park wants some art, that, they wouldn't just get the art or hire a muralist, that they would, involve in the Arts Commission. So I think that is very important to me. I think that it's, again, based on the history, I'm not opposed to it going there in the park. And my guess would be it's not going to be, with a lot of play equipment in the park, it's not going to be overly attractive to play on anyways. But I think the points that have been raised, are good points.
Mayor, to that end, this piece would be located approximately 550 feet away, as the crow flies, from the child's play area. And then, as Mr. McClendon pointed out, in the 4 years that it was in front of City Hall, it was about maybe 150, 125 feet away from the child's play area.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Ross. You're muted. Councilmember, you're muted.
I think I can speak for most of us here who have been a parent. Anything is climbable. A set of stairs, a couple of rocks, it really doesn't take anything too sophisticated for children to climb. And I think this is a lovely piece. I also agree, and I have spoken to both of the chairs of the committees, the commissions, that they should be liaising. But I think this is a great piece, and we should not hold it against the children that they are climbers by nature.
All right, thank you. Are there other comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing that we can possibly do is we can put a sign near the sculpture stating that no climbing allowed, even though it's not going to be their kids are not going to read it and they're not going to care, but it might be helpful for parents that if they do a sign that says no climbing allowed, might be helpful. So that's one thing. Another thing is, Stone, can you tell me how tall or how high the base is going to be, where the piece is going to be placed?
So yes, I can. So this base is really not going to be that high. This base is likely going to be, I would say, 12 inches or less. Really, the base here is all about depth in the ground, so as to ensure that there is stability to the piece. If you recall, on the passages piece, there was height, and that was because there was the concern about ensuring that that piece of art was high enough in the event that a car were to come off of Avenida Mar Via, which is a faster street with more traffic, that if a car were to depart that lane and were to come up, it wouldn't hit the piece of art, it would hit the foundation. Because of the slower speeds of this intersection and the less traffic, we don't have that height requirement or that height concern. So this is going to be a couple inches off the ground, maybe it's 6 or 8 inches, and the area surrounding it is dirt.
All right, thank you. I know we have our risk manager, Tammy Scott, on the line. Tammy, did you have any concerns about this piece or any comments you wish to make?
I agree with all of you, with everything that everyone said, that there is a risk associated there. But like Charlie had previously stated, and Stone, we have had, I want to say it was located down here in Town Square where the police memorial statue is, for almost 8 years. And we really had no issues. The concern that I have, and the reason that it was that the installation is close to $5,000, give or take, is because of the weight. So as you know, the heavier something is, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, I'm not thinking, I didn't have my video on. The heavier something is, the deeper in the ground that it has to go, because when somebody touches it, it'll go like this. And that sand that we have out there, the base will just topple. So that's our concern. So I've directed the contractor, as you know, we use Desert Ants as our concrete contractor, to make sure that it is deep enough so something like that does not happen as best that we can. We can't mitigate cars driving up on the park that periodically do that. But this corner is not as exposed traffic-wise as the previous corner. And there is sufficient lighting there, which is why the Public Arts Commission didn't choose to do uplighting at that location versus where there is more traffic. So all in all, we have a fountain that we have huge risk on, that we haven't had a claim in 20 some odd years. And I put this kind of in that category, in an area of play. We haven't had that experience. Also, to Stone's comment, it's not an area typically where kids play. It's on the corner where the tennis courts are, that are older kids have a tendency of congregating in the tennis courts where there are more lights and not on this corner. So that would be my summary.
I think that's helpful. So, Councilmember Lamb, we haven't heard from you.
I just wanted to summarize what everybody else is saying, and I agree with them. I think the placement is wonderful, and I think it's a way, and in the right, after driving by there, it's going to be a great asset to that part. But I also think communicating and having the advice and the overview of the parks is the way to go forward. Thank you.
Yes. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple more questions. Now, did we get $5,000 for that type of setup in the concrete that's going to be used? It seems quite steep for the size. You would have to go quite deep in order to spend $5,000 for such a contract. Did we get, even though we're going to do it, are we going to subcontract this, or are we actually going to do the work? And what will happen if it's less than that? Or can you tell me a little bit about it?
Sure. We've estimated it at $5,000. I'm frankly, because Desert Ants has been closed for the holidays, and they've had a COVID-19 outbreak for the last 2 weeks. So based upon other installations that we have done, it's going to be in the vicinity of $4,000 to $5,000. But I would hate to come back to you for $1,000 for an approval. What we can do is report back to you if it's less, which I'm hoping. But we've got to go about 2 feet in the ground at that location. We had to do the same thing down here at Town Square when we built the foundation as well here. So whether we do it or a contractor does it, it's still going to be the same labor costs, and we will be involved in pouring and doing the forms to hold the structure as well.
Okay. All right. Yeah, still seems pretty steep, but
any money, if I may add, any money that is not used will remain in the Public Arts Fund for further acquisition or installation of art.
Okay. All right. And you just mentioned to me, my next question was, this is coming from the Public Arts Fund, just for people to know. Okay.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just on a side note, I kind of want to share with Tammy, but with the rest of you, I was in a bit of a freak out mode the other day, looking at the police log to see a piece of art had been struck by a car right by my home. And I immediately sent my husband out. You go look, take pictures, come back. And he came back and he said, I don't see anything. And so I thought, well, he just didn't see. So I went out to look for myself and no damage whatsoever. And apparently there was a lot of damage to the car. So those bases do their jobs, and I will think more fondly of them going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So unless anybody else has any burning questions, I'll call for the question. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the
Mayor.
motion for the Swiss cheese in Panorama Park.
All right. We
I
have a
second.
motion by Councilmember Carnevale, a second by Councilmember Lamb. Was that you?
Yes.
All right.
you.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ross, Councilmember Ross.
Oh, I was trying to unmute. Yes, yes.
Okay. Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Carnevale,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez,
Yes.
Mayor Gregory.
Yes.
Motion carries, all ayes.
Thank you, everyone, for that. A really good discussion, and hopefully we are making it clear we would like more interaction between the commissions. So,
You bet. Happy to do that.
all right, we'll go on to the next item. Item E, the Cathedral City Small Business COVID Grant Forgivable Loan Program update and a contract ratification. So, Mr. City Manager, I'll throw it back to you, but I have a feeling it's going to be in stones.
I'll be throwing it right back to Stone in a minute. You have discussed this at each of your last two meetings, I believe, and we've made some significant progress thanks to the work of Stone, Vince Lopez in CDBG and others. And he'll give you an update of where we are and ask you to approve the contract with the consultant who is helping us navigate the very complex web that surrounds CDBG funded projects.
Thank you very much, Shirley. So Mayor Pro Tem, and fellow council members, thank you again for the opportunity to provide an update on our Small Business Assistance Program. So for the audience at home that is just tuning in and they're not familiar with this, late in 2020, the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, gave the City of Cathedral City an additional round of funding in response to COVID-19. And at the time, as obviously the council knows, the council voted to direct staff to take those funds and to create a business assistance program, because council was aware of just how hard the Cathedral City businesses have been impacted by COVID-19. And this program is intended to help those businesses. So in doing that, and in working with TDA Consulting, which we will talk about here shortly, we've identified the two most effective ways to get the funds from CDBG into the hands of the Cathedral City small businesses. So they're both essentially grants. The first one is a grant in the truest form, and that one is for micro enterprises. That's for businesses who have 5 employees, including the owner, or less. And in those, the business would be qualified to receive up to $7,500. For businesses who are interested in, who are either larger or who are interested in making more substantial improvements to their business, either internally or externally, in order to help the business operate within, once they're allowed, COVID-19 requirements, they have the ability to apply for a forgivable loan of up to $20,000. And I can explain the forgivable loan part if people are interested. So in terms of the program status, the online platform is built. It has been launched. We're accepting applications. And as of this morning, 26 businesses have already begun filling out the application. And so we're very pleased with that. And that has been really, I have, Tammy Scott and the TDA and Vince and the folks at Wise Hive have really done a great job of coming together and working through the holidays to accomplish this, because as Charlie alluded to, this really is a complex program insofar as ensuring that we check all the boxes and do the steps that HUD requires. So in terms of next steps, the step that's really mission critical is to ratify the professional services agreement with TDA Consultants. Then as businesses begin to finalize their applications and submit their applications, then TDA and folks here from city staff will be able to review those applications and then identify which of the businesses qualify, begin awarding funds. And then, of course, as the program goes on, manage the fund utilization and the reporting, which is very important for that forgivable loan. And then ultimately, once all of the awards have been made, and then from that point forward, in 12 months, we would be able to close the program down once all of the required reporting is done and then forwarded on up to HUD. So with that, the first step is to ratify the professional services agreement with TDA Consultants. As we had discussed in the last city council meeting, we had engaged TDA in December, and that was after going to the market and looking at nationally recognized CDBG consultants, and we ultimately identified TDA as the best consultant to meet the council goals, meet our needs, and be able to respond in a cost-effective manner. And so based on our current CDBG requirement, we are able to allocate up to about $84,000, just under $85,000 total for the administration of this program. Wise Hive was a cost of about $10,000, and it's going to serve as a very effective platform for this. So then that would leave about $74,964.50 that could be allocated to TDA if TDA, based on the time and materials contract, needs it. And one of the things I mentioned to earlier, they really play a mission critical role because they have, having been working with CDBG for the last 22 years, they have been and will continue to be an integral part of the process to make sure that we as the city are doing all of the things that HUD expects of us. So with that, the staff respectfully requests the council approve the agreement for services between the City of Cathedral City and TDA Consulting, and then ultimately approve payment of CDBG funds not to exceed $74,964.50.
All right, thank you for that report. If you could close your presentation so we can see the whole council. There you go. Thank you so much. All right, council, do you have any questions of City Manager Mr. James? Mayor Pro Tem, was that a question first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, a question. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stone, can you tell me, out of all the businesses that have applied, do you have some kind of a list of what type of businesses have applied?
Ultimately that answer would be yes, because that is one of the things that we have specifically requested be called out on the application. We have explained that priority will be given to the businesses that have been impacted most severely, namely restaurants, retail, and personal services. Personal services could include hair salons, barber salons, nail salons, fitness gyms, personal trainers. And so really the goal is to identify and address the impacts of COVID-19 insofar as the impacts of COVID-19 haven't necessarily been equally distributed. The bankruptcy attorney, their business is probably dramatically increased, or the accountant has probably stayed the same. But in terms of the barber salon where it's been forced to close, or the fitness place that it's been forced to close, those people have been really impacted by this. And so our goal with the program is to deliver the funds to the businesses that need it most.
Yeah, but from the applications that we have received, do you know the breakdown of those amounts of applications?
Well, what I can tell you is so far we have received, we have had, out of the 26 applications, 2 applications have been marked complete, but they have not been submitted. And then of the rest of the applications that are currently being filled out, because we do ask for a fair amount of detail to ensure that TDA and the city is equipped to make sound decisions. And so they have to provide us copies of the business license, articles of incorporation, several months worth of expenses, balance sheets, and stuff like that. But so far, I've been a little surprised to see that I would say probably out of 26, I would say right now probably 22 or 23 have been micro enterprises. I would have thought that we would have seen a lot more. Businesses apply for up to the $20,000 for the forgivable loan. But right now, that snapshot that I saw this morning was, again, over 20 have all been micro enterprises. One of them was, let's see, we had just from memory, several restaurants, a photographer, a gym. So those have been the types of businesses so far.
Thank you, James.
Other questions? Councilmember Carnevale.
Thank you. Stone, what's the total amount that you have?
The total amount is $466,000 that we were awarded in phase 3 of the CDBG funds. And so,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Continue.
So so we initially, when we did the substantial amendment, we could apply up to 20% of the $466,000. We could apply that to program administration. So what we did was we asked for a 15%, not a 20%. And so we have about a 5% leeway. So if you were just to take the 466 and you were just to take worst case scenario, that would be about $372,000 that we would be able to allocate to our businesses.
Okay. And what becomes of the funds if you only use like 250,000? What becomes of the funds? Where does it apply to, or do you give it back?
So then at that point, what we could do is the engineering department could make another amendment, and then they could allocate those funds to other uses. John, would you like to contribute to that, or is that sufficient enough?
No, you're accurate. That's fine.
And you're saying 466. The staff report says 566. So can we just clarify that?
Fees.
Is it 566?
The original 566 is correct. When we get down into the 400s is once we have backed out the administrative allocation.
I've got it. I just thought I heard him say a couple of times that it was started at 460.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, other questions? All right, do we have any public comments or questions? If you are participating with us by Zoom and you would like to make a comment, if you would raise your hand.
I see no hands, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Then I will return it back for any future further council comments, or if somebody is ready to make a motion.
I'm ready to move that we ratify the awarding of the contract to TDA Consulting.
There's a motion by Councilmember Lamb. We have a second? Second by Councilmember Carnevale. I know I'm excited to be moving this forward. I know we've been working on it for quite a while and people are hurting. I know it's limited. We'd like to be able to do more, but I'm excited that we're at least moving forward with this. So, all right, can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Ross? Is that a?
Yes, that was a yes.
Okay. Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Carnevale?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mayor Gregory?
Yes.
The motion carries all ayes.
Stone James, can you tell our viewers real quickly where they could get more information about this program if they think they might qualify?
Be happy to. So the Cathedral City Economic Development Department has set up a website, and so it is most easily accessed by going to ccedd.org. And when they go to that page, they just have to go down just a little bit, I don't know, 4 inches, and they'll see a bright yellow box. And that yellow box says the Cathedral City Small Business Assistance Program. And then they click on that, and then it goes to a brief introduction of the program, the two tranches, really, the microenterprise and forgivable loan. And then it goes directly to sign up, where they will create their profile, and then they'll be able to begin submitting all of the information and attaching all of the uploads into that online portal.
All right, thank you. And if I know our city communications people, if they haven't already, they'll be all over getting this out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next item. Looks like it is item F on our legislative calendar, a cooperative agreement between the city of Cathedral City and the city of Palm Springs. Actually, if we don't mind, is this a good time to take just a little short 10-minute break? We're about an hour and a half in.
Sure.
Well, let's do that, and let's come back about 7:10 if we could. To begin again.
I am ready, Mayor, when you are.
And we do have our city engineer. So let's go ahead where we left off, which was item 6F, our cooperative agreement between the city of Cathedral City and the city of Palm Springs for the Vista Chino Bridge project. City manager.
And I'll just introduce John Corella, who will give this one. I think this is a really good news item, and it's really a step in the right direction for a project that our respective communities, Cathedral City and Palm Springs, have been looking forward to for a long time. John?
Unmute, John. Here. You want me to unmute you?
Figured it out. Thank you. Are we still seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, I'm here to talk to you about the cooperative agreement with City of Palm Springs for the Vista Chino Bridge, as our city manager introduced having. It's going to be a little extensive because we haven't seen this for a while, and I want to bring everyone up to speed on this. So just to give you the limits of this project are from Gene Autry going east to about Carmela Drive. This is just short of a mile. And you can see the limits there. Why is this bridge needed? Well, obviously from the February 14th storm of 2 years past and prior storms, Vista Chino tends to be a challenge. It's one of the first one closed. We even have gates on it on our side to stop traffic and reroute them. Here's some project facts, and I stated a few. The big thing on this, of all these facts, is that this bridge will be built, or it's proposed to be built, with 11-foot sidewalk and bike trail on the north and south sides of the bridge. So here's a rendering of the elevation view of the bridge. Obviously, we didn't have enough room to put all the piers in there, but it's quite a lengthy bridge. There's a good section view of what the bridge will look like. So 2 lanes in each direction, 4 lanes in my world, and then a bike and pedestrian path on the north and south side of the bridge. The pedestrian path is very similar to what's going to be on the south side of the Ramon Road Bridge, but this one will be on both sides. Very big challenge on this project, and this is what's driving up the cost of the bridge, is there's 34 power poles on the project. As you can see, some of them are transmission mains, lines, and then the others are more localized sub-transmission distribution mains. Right now, it's proposed that the best, outweighing the cost of additional right-of-way to underground these, the best solution right now is to put them in the bridge themselves. So that's where we're looking at right now. And I'm going to remind you, Palm Springs is the lead agency. But we do participate in the meetings. And then spectrum cable, which is what I call the underburden. You can see the underhanging of the power lines. We call that in the engineering world the underburden. Those will also go inside the bridge. There's a lot of information on here. The one big thing is that there are some assumptions on the traffic, and the assumption is the Ramon Road Bridge will be done by the time this one gets started. And the way federal funding is looking, It'll probably line up with that because we've been forewarned that everything's going to be metered out in steps from this past year of COVID challenges on the depletion of the funds and the high cost of projects. In addition to that, there's a lot of environmental issues that are being resolved as we speak. We're making progress, but we have to secure all these permits, and people wonder why bridge projects take so long. It's a lot of those permits. So I found this in my files, and I thought this was good to show you what the bridge will look like now and what it's proposed to look like after the construction of the bridge. So we can all see the video, correct?
Yes.
So there is moving along the path today. And they're going to do some similar aesthetic features that they're doing on the Ramon Road Bridge with these wing kind of details. They're really functional as artwork. And you can see that it really changed the complexion of that whole area there. Crossing the channel, and it'd be really great when there's a storm. We don't have to worry about closing the road. And the one thing this video presents is why those like wing features or those are on the bridge is you will get that effect as you go across it. So it has a 3D effect. Just to let you know the timeline right now, the environmental docs have been completed documents. Final plans and specs are anticipated to be done in the next year and a half. So, and they're at 65% design. The right-of-way and the easements, they're securing those same time frame. Caltrans authorized construction. This is the best hopeful timeline is that they'll do that in 2023 and start construction in 2024. Estimated cost of this project is $95 million, and a big chunk of that, as I stated, is those power lines that have to be dealt with. If there was no federal participation, and if there was no CVAG participation, you have a proportional split. When we pay for these bridges, we pay for what is in our city and what our city impacts to the bridge project. So on the proportional split on what we're looking at on the bridge, Palm Springs would bear the 92.07%. Gets down to the double, the two digits in the decimal places because of the costs. They are significant. And Cathedral City 7.93. So if we didn't have any federal or CVAG participation, you can see the cost there. The cost our city at least $7.5 million for the small portion that's in our city. But the beauty, and I put this chart in here, and this is in your staff report, the beauty of all this participation is our city's fair share would come down to $216,000. And that's what our commitment right now is in the agreement before you today. So what we're requesting is for you to approve this agreement with Palm Springs. I know that Palm Springs has this on their docket this week or next week when their council meeting occurs. Same agreement. Our attorney did review it and make some modifications. They agreed to those modifications. Authorize the city manager to execute this agreement. And then when we go forward with our budget project, because there's really no money needing to be passed through now, that we authorize the 216 and or put that into the CIP project number 8899, which is in your budget now and has like $12,000 in it just for small payments. But we would fill that in preparation for the 21-22 budget year, and you would consider that as in your approvals of the budget when it comes up. And I'm available for any questions.
All right, questions. I see Councilmember Carnevale has his hand up.
Yeah, you know, having this bridge built in 3 years, and are they dealing with today's cost of goods? I mean, how do we know that concrete, steel, labor is not going to triple by that time? So should we plan to instead of doing the 200 plus, put 500,000 away? Because everything's got to go up. So
That's a very good question. And yes, the estimate is 2017. We were dealing, at that time when they did the estimate, they were dealing a scales of magnitude of what they were perceiving it to be. So right now, if there was a change in the estimate, Palm Springs would come back, and that's either up or down. Palm Springs would come back and we'd do a modification and amendment to the agreement. So I think it's a little premature because in 2017, they put the high conservative number in, and it may actually become less. I don't think we're going to vary too much as a percentage shows. So if it drastically went up $1 million or $2 million, our portion isn't going to be that significant.
okay. Thank you, sir.
That's the recommendation.
All right, great question. Other questions? Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
Yes, John, how you doing? This money is, when do they have to be paid? Do they have to be paid in the next 6 months or in the next year? Since the bridge will not get started till 2024.
They will be obligated to pay as they're due. So as Palm Springs goes through the right-of-way acquisition process, any portion of that right-of-way acquisition, they would bill us and we would end up paying. Ramon Road Bridge, there's a bill that we need right now, and we'll pay those, and that had been fully authorized through the cooperation agreement on that.
And to follow up on Councilmember,
I'm sorry, I just don't, if I may say, I don't anticipate a whole lot happening in the next 6 months before the budget.
Okay. And to talk about Mr. Carnevale's question, Councilman Carnevale, regarding the increase in cost, the possible increase in cost. Now, that will also be a percentage that we would have to pay. So out of 90-some million, if we only have to pay 200,000, if it goes up 20 million, that means we probably have to pay about a quarter of what we're paying in addition to right now.
Correct. It's very insignificant, and it could actually go down.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ross.
What do you mean you're putting the wires in the bridge?
What we mean is, good question for all those. No. Most of the bridges that we've been putting in, such as Cathedral, the Date Palm Bridge, Cathedral Canyon, water pipes, electrical conduits, and everything are hung or underneath different features, such as in the Cathedral Canyon Bridge. Under the sidewalks, going to be a lot of cable TV spectrum facilities. Under the bridge is going to be hung conduits for power lines. So under the other bridges, we hang water pipes and sewer pipes. So as needed, these bridges are made to accommodate that. So
that makes me feel better. I assumed they'd be under the bridge, but when you said in the bridge, I had some different vision. Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Councilmember Lamb, I didn't see your hand, but I didn't get to you. So.
The only comment after living here for 40 years, I think this is absolutely brilliant. And the fact that CVAG is, helping us, I mean, that's their mission, but the fact that we're actually actualizing this and having it happen and benefiting our residents, that they can traverse this valley and get to jobs and schools. It's brilliant. I'm delighted.
Excellent. So in a similar vein, and I saw that you are saying that money will be put aside in the biennial budget. So I assume when we get to budget, by that time you and the city manager and the administrative services director will have kind of made an estimate of how much needs to go in this year and how much needs to go in the second year.
Yes.
Okay. And so,
it may even extend out farther than that, but we want to make sure it's holding.
And are we looking that would be all general fund money, or is there some other roads money that sometimes goes into there, or Measure A money, or anything that we get?
Well, it would typically come out of the general fund money unless we chose a different fund an eligible way of funding it, but typically it'd be general fund money.
Okay, and I know that'll be more discussion that we would have during the budget. And I know that, of course, it always sounds tempting, oh, we'll use some other fund, but then that means other roads don't get paved or rehabbed. So,
Correct.
So I'm sure, okay, I just wondered if it had to be general. Sounds like probably not, but in reality, probably yes, but that would be a discussion in budgets. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this? If you're watching us on Zoom, if you would use the raise your hand feature, or if you're on the phone, use *9. If you want to make a public comment on this topic.
I see no hands, Mayor.
All right, then we'll return it back to council. Either further discussion, questions, or if someone's ready to make a motion.
I move that we approve the cooperative agreement between the City of Cathedral City and the City of Palm Springs for the Vista Chino Bridge project.
Thank you. Does that include authorizing the expenditures as outlined?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Carnevale. We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ross,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Carnevale,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez,
Yes.
Mayor Gregory.
Yes.
Motion carries, all ayes.
Thank you very much. All right, that'll take us to agenda item 6G, discussion regarding Municipal Code 8.30, underground wires. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. We're bringing this to you actually at the request of Councilmember Carnevale, and it's a topic that I think is timely to discuss. Correctly, I think many years ago, previous councils made the decisions that it was in the best interest of the city for a number of reasons, which John will cover, to require undergrounding of power lines in association with new development. Anytime you do something like that, then as you go through implementing it, you come to find that, there's factors that actually just weren't part of the discussion at the time or weren't considered. And so we've come across some situations like that and would like to, this is like a study session item. We just want your feedback on some issues related to this ordinance. And if you decide that you would like us to do something different, then that'll come back at a future meeting for actual action. And before I give John's full presentation, I'll probably stop there. We've identified 2 or 3 different pathways that you could consider in this, and we'd just like for you to listen to the issue and provide us some feedback. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Charlie. And I'm presuming everyone can see my slide. Mr. Mayor, can you nod your head if you can see that? Thank you. And as we were talked about, it really hones in on Municipal Code 8.3 undergrounding wires. And I want to make sure that we have a study session coming up on January 27th on a MUP, what I call Master Undergrounding Plan project. This has nothing to do with it, nor is it even related to what we're talking about today. So I just wanted to make that clear. Municipal Code 8.30, the municipal code is very wordy, but I actually, in this case, this municipal code is right on target. It's very specific. And what we're really focused in on is local line, what a local line means, and a community line. So local lines are typically the lines that you see at the rear or backside of the properties. They're under 35,000 volts. And in a lot of cases, the ones you see behind the properties are about 12,000 volts. And they're the ones that carry the service lines to each one of the houses. And they're not in the public right of way. They're actually in their own private easements behind houses. Community lines, on the other hand, are things that you might see. These could be in the back of lot right of ways, but in most cases, these are the ones you see along the city streets, such as Dade Palm Drive, Ramon Road, areas like that, including even East Palm Canyon, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks. When we talk about, and this is how, and I'll include the planning department the director of planning and I, this is how, when we work with developers and we put in their conditions of approval, it's the first thing we look at on the size of their property. And we look at what their obligations are regarding local lines and community lines. And spelled out there to a T, and it gives at least Mr. Rodriguez and myself at least firm direction on what we need to do, and tell the developer, or at least recommend to the planning commission that it follows the guidelines of municipal code. What needs to be happen. Why undergrounding? Obviously, it reduces overhead visual blight. You can immediately tell when you're in an area, at least I do, when I'm driving, I can notice that there's not a lot of overhead lines. There's safety in the fact that you don't have overhead lines above. Let's say there's an earthquake or a lot of wind. You can have lines that fall. As we know now, and we're not specifically in those kind of areas, but overhead lines cause fire. Dropping the lines improves property values, and it's a boon for economic development in the city. It just improves the skyline. Here's an example of someone that's identified their challenge up front, Tower Market. They're going to be doing a lot of line drops in their area, and they identified all their lines up front because this was a condition. They read the ordinance, and you can see all the line dropping that they're going to do, and even going across streets and to eliminate the overhead requirement. Now, mind you, on Date Palm Drive, they're only dropping some of the lower lines on there because the higher line would be considered the community line, and they don't have a 600-foot frontage. Then we just entitled Mountain View Estates, and Mountain View Estates has community lines across their frontage. They're actually 605 to 10 feet across their front frontage. These are these lines here, and they're obligated in their conditions of approval to drop those. The case that really brought this to our attention is parcel map 737903, and I'll give you a few caveats, and I'm going to give you facts. The location of this is Date Palm Drive is here where my cursor is. This is Rancho Vista Drive. This consisted of 2 parcels, and they have behind the lot lines here. They don't necessarily feed the houses to the west because there's another behind the lot line that follows this line up right in here. Because this developer chose to make 3 lots out of it, he was subject to going through the planning commission because he's creating a new lot. So under the requirements of the Subdivision Map Act, creating 3 lots, he needs to go through a vetting process, not only from an environmental standpoint, but from a utilitarian standpoint, impacts. From perception, the lines that they would have dropped in this case would have been from here to here, pole to pole, seems somewhat reasonable to have those dropped. In reality, in communicating with Edison, and mind you, we have not gotten any solid facts nor estimates from Edison because the developer chose not to pay for that estimate. But Edison said that if they're going to do a drop in this area, they have to actually do this length of drop, which is 610 feet. Mind you, the developer's property is 210 feet. So you have this 610 feet that would make a logical drop from Edison's purposes in the area. So we're left with this conundrum, so to speak, because staff has very little room to work with. From a staff standpoint, when I'm working with developers and I have ordinances behind you, it makes my job a lot easier because I don't get the, oh, do me a favor and do this. I can stand by what is in the ordinance, and I don't necessarily have that flexibility. But it presents a problem because in essence, I can't drop that requirement at a whim because the Planning Commission actually imposed that requirement on them. Mind you, in this case, and the developer has told me this, he did not read the conditions of approval and make any comments up front on that. So, and I have a feeling they'll be in public comment and they can speak to that. So, in working with the city manager, we were trying to think outside the box, and we really came up with 3 options that we can do today. And if there's any change from the first option, then it would have to come back through a process. So number 1, we apply the ordinance as written. And technically, all the other developers you've seen on there, whether the pole actually stops at their property or if they extend across the street or somewhere, which we do for a lot of developers, whether it's across the street or not, they have to underground the line. They have to chase the line to the nearest logical spot to underground it, and they do the undergrounding. Number 2, this speaks of, do we collect an appropriate in proportion deposit in lieu of them dropping the line so that at least they complied with the condition in theory, and we collect the money as, yes, they didn't just get it dropped because other developers have to pay this. The challenge with collecting that is, if we were truly going to collect that deposit, we would have to reimburse that money in 5 years if we did not do that actual work. Or you could create a residential undergrounding fund similar to the fund I'm going to explain to you in 2 weeks, which is for regional arterials identified. And you create a fund that you put it in there and you do some of these localized undergrounding projects. And then the last one is, and you know, Charlie and I talked about it, I'm not really excited about, you modify the ordinance to allow the director of engineering limited latitude to make decisions based on individual factors. And that's fine and dandy. And, you know, it depends on what those latitudes are. But then that also puts a lot of pressure on both the planning and the engineering department on that kind of flexibility. And, you know, my instincts, and I told Charlie, is it has to be hemmed in pretty good, because once you have a lot of flexibility, then the developers really start working on you to make a different decision. So that is your discussion point today. And I'll leave it at that and answer any questions or chime in when you'd like me to. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You can take down the presentation so we can see everyone.
Sorry. Yes, sir.
Does anyone have any questions? And then we'll get to comments after we hear public comment. But if you have any questions of John right now, then it would be appropriate to ask. Councilmember Carnevale, did I see that?
One thing I don't believe John touched on was the amounts, what it would cost for these 2 or 3 lots to go underground.
So I think, I don't want to answer for him, but I think he said he didn't have an estimate because it didn't.
But then when John and I had been discussing this, I thought it was up there to close a couple $100,000.
Yes, if I may.
I mean, that's why we're here, I think. Yes,
and at the very beginning, I got the word, and I'm going to be very candid. The developer came in and said, "This cost me $1 million. I can't do it." And so my response was, "Have you talked to Edison?" And in my discussions with Edison, is they provide estimates, but they don't want to be committed without the developer paying for them to actually provide them an estimate, whatever that cost would be to get the estimate. So, I mean, if we're talking specifically on the Rancho Vista project, I talked to the Edison people and they said, "Don't hold me to this, John." And they were trying to work with me, and they said probably about $500,000, maybe even $450,000. But they didn't look at it too tight. So I went out there and got all my shoes dirty, thorns in my side. And I looked at it and I said, I don't think anyone's really looked at this because, yeah, there could be some costs, and I think it could be significantly less. I asked the developer to do an estimate on this. I get an answer. They wanted to use an estimate for some different type of undergrounding on a track work they did in years past. And I said, why don't you do an estimate on this and we'll look at it as a reasonable amount. One thing that I've spoken to the city manager and council member Carnevale and council member Ross, because it's their area and the developer engaged them, was I do have the latitude in the ordinance to take some sort of in lieu fee in proportion to reality cost. But the pushback from the developer was, we're not anywhere near that cost. And I even said, you know, I'm estimating this at 250, 200. Can you guys provide an estimate? And I got that resistance that they weren't going to do it. And you divide it by 3 and you do the cost. So I think from a staff level, we did as much as we could. But then it comes to the question, if we collect a deposit, we would have to return it after 5 years to, if we did not do that specific job, meaning undergrounding it, if the city undertook footing the other costs, because the other developers in the area would probably do single lots. There's only a few lots left. Backing out of it, if the developer just maintained the 2 lots, he would not even be in this situation because he wouldn't have exposed himself to the entitlement process. He could have just came in as a lot of our infill projects and just developed those 2 individual lots. And so I'll leave it at that. Those are the facts.
All right. Thank you, John.
All right. Questions, Councilmember Ross.
I have 2 questions for you, Director Corella. Can you please explain why local lines are mandated at 200 feet and community lines are mandated at 600 feet?
No other reason other than our ordinances, when you look at them and you look at other cities, depending if other cities modified them, are very similar to other cities in trying to accomplish the same task. So I can't answer you that question on why those are specific, other than I know that our municipal code in a lot of general areas followed these.
And then my second question, and please, do not take this as being combative. This has been challenging for me as well, and I think you've been through this process with me too. Can you please, and maybe City Manager McClendon would like to take this. This would be up to whoever would like to take this question. What do you think the percentage reality is that you would actually develop underlining on Rancho Vista in the next 5 years?
I actually don't think we would undertake a project. We haven't done anything unless the city council had an appetite to start doing that.
Yeah, and if I may, Councilmember Ross, I think that's really the heart of the issue here. Is it seems to me illogical to collect an in lieu payment when there's little likelihood that you'll get the money from the adjacent properties to actually do the project, which is why on that particular option number 2, we suggested that if you're going to do something like that, it needs to be more like a fee that goes into a fund where you can do then a residential undergrounding project, maybe not there, but at least somewhere. And then they've been treated fairly according to the same thing that similarly situated developers in another location would have to pay. But that's really the crux of the problem, is it doesn't make sense to collect an in lieu fee when you're not likely to actually do the project. And instead, I would suggest that if you want to go down that path, you consider it a fee that's not in lieu of undergrounding, but that goes into this undergrounding fund that then we can use it somewhere else.
And if
I
I
have a
may,
bunch of comments, but those were just my 2 questions.
if I may add, you have to weigh in there the developers that are doing it now, such as the Tower Market. And I might add that this developer has already sent us an email, and I know the council has received it because he sent it to everyone, that he's bringing up another location that has kind of a different situation, but it's trying to be thrown into this same situation too. So it's a decision for the council on how they want to address that.
So hi, John, thank you very much for the presentation. So tell me again, I didn't quite get that. What triggered the difference between having 2 lots and 3 lots, and now we have this situation? What was the trigger there?
The developer's choice to make, and bottom line is to develop it to 3 lots versus just the existing 2. I imagine there was a better profit gain in, if they did their pro forma, to do 3 lots.
Okay, and then
more specifically, Councilwoman Lamb, it went from being 2 105-foot lots to 1 210-foot lot. And
okay, that's
it. Exceeded the 200.
Thank you,
Okay,
council member. That's right.
Okay, that's it. And then, so who is responsible for the estimate? Is it the Southern California Edison? They're the ones that would come up with it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
bottom line, it's the developer's responsibility to provide staff with the required information.
Okay.
Edison would be the appropriate party for the developer to work with to provide.
Okay, so the developer would go to Edison. Edison would come out, have an idea of what they're doing, saying this is the estimate, and then the developers would, whatever cost it is, have to reap some benefit on his project, otherwise it wouldn't go. Somebody mentioned $500,000. I mean, it's $500,000. If it's $500,000, I mean, you're not going to make that much money on 3 houses. I don't care where you are. That's not going to happen. So if that doesn't happen for him, it's not going to happen for anybody.
And as I stated, there's no fact in that, and that's why.
Am I saying that? Am I seeing this correctly or not?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that it would be nice to know that fact.
Okay.
My standpoint, to make some decisions.
Okay.
Pro Tem, you have a question?
Yes. Well, I did meet with the developer, and they did show me some of the paperwork they did have, and also some of the plans that they're planning to develop, the plans, the blueprints of the homes. And after they provided me with all the information, I drove by and I looked at the property, and knowing a little bit about development, the area right now, the conforming area, you can say, is all the power poles that are there is more likely that will remain there for decades. I do not believe that the current property owners will actually pitch in and would want to underground those power lines. That being said, is these property, or what used to be 2 lots, now 3, will never be developed if we push them to do such
Council member,
underground.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't hear a question. We're going to do comments after we get public comment. So,
okay.
Did you have a question?
No, go ahead. I'll continue with the comments after that.
Okay. I just think it's important that we hear from the public, because I anticipate we do have somebody here before we actually get into the general discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
If there's no other council questions, then if we do have, and I know we do have some members of the public, 3 that are there on Zoom, I could see them, and including Mr. Alibaba, who I know is the one that had raised this. Is Mr. Alibaba, if you're there, would you like to raise your hand and speak, or anyone else that's there in the public?
Mr. Wright has raised his hand to speak, so I have transferred him over.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mr. Wright, when you're ready, if you could unmute yourself and turn on your video if you like, and we'd be ready to hear your comments.
Mayor, may I ask, we are sticking to the 3 minutes on the comments, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright, are you there? Mr. Wright? Please unmute yourself.
Okay, unmute. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Please begin. Your 3 minutes have started.
Mayor, councilman, city engineer, city manager, I just want to thank you very much for considering our situation here. I am the general contractor hired by Alibaba. I thought he was going to go first, but I didn't want to miss my window. But I am speaking for him if he's not coming forward. But the situation with the property, I think John's done a great illustration of the outline. I don't know if you could pull up that site plan again, but it was 2 lots. We would have never had this issue if we had gone through the 2 lots. They initiated, I came along, I'm going to be buying one of these lots, and then looking at the condition, we underground the power. You know, when I talk with Edison, we talk with many emails, it's $500,000. It just kills the project. So that's why we're here. 2 lots, we're getting the 3rd lot, which also kicked in the requirement to extend the mainline sewer, which now it makes available all those residents across the street. That's actually more than the cost of 1 lot, just extending the mainline sewer in the street. Also, the 5-year reimbursement, even if we posted the $500,000, we can't, number one, can't post that. But even if we posted, say, $10,000 or $50,000 or whatever $1,000, it's never going to be undergrounded because the length of it, you can't just do our portion, as John showed on that map. You have to go way south lots and way north and then underground everybody's overhead services. Those people can't afford that. It just isn't going to happen. But, you know, with the need for housing right now, I think I heard earlier in their conversation of the Coachella Valley, in 2006, it was like 80,000 homes available. Now there's on the market, I think you mentioned like some 1,800. We're in a housing shortage. We need to get going. But my biggest issue is we thought we were ready to go. I've actually got a lot of employees that are out of work. They also have restaurant jobs. They work at night, and they were counting on this job to get going. And I said, you know, we can't. I'm trying to work it out, but I think that we can come to resolve with the city, and I'm hoping that that we can agree to at least release the permit and be able to start with the grading and continue with the project. I think it's a positive so that that property can be developed. It's the last property in the area on that line. So I just want to thank you for considering this. I appreciate the excellent job that you're doing to illustrate this. And I don't know if my time's up, but I see Alibaba on here. Go ahead, Ali. You wanted to speak also?
All right. So, Mr. Wright, are you finished?
Well, basically, we're all going through this COVID thing together. We all need work, and this is considered a vital industry. And it keeps jobs going and providing housing for Coachella Valley. So I just want to thank the council and the engineer and the manager for taking a look at this thing. So it's just a hardship we can't overcome unless we get some of your help. So thank you. Yes, I'm finished.
All right, thank you. All right, City Clerk, the next speaker.
So the next speaker is Alibaba.
All right, Mr. Alibaba, we can see you. If you would unmute yourself so we could hear you, you can go ahead with your comments. Sir, you are muted. You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. I hope you can unpop that thing. Don't touch that. No, but it popped up like a big bubble.
City Clerk, could you remove Mr. Wright and could you unmute Mr. Alibaba?
Yeah, I have tried to unmute Mr. Alibaba, but I don't know if we're fighting each other or not. So
my unmute came in way late after like 30 seconds.
Okay. Let me try one more time.
It went off for a flash.
Yeah. I'm unmuting, but it's not unmuting, so I don't know.
Oh,
There
there
is
it
a
is.
better.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Alibaba, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you, everybody. This development is not what I heard tonight. When we approached the city, they didn't say we can only have 2 houses. They said we can have 4 houses. Will be better to do not cul-de-sac, make 3. And I never heard we're going faced with the electrical problem until what you call a planning commissioner comes in, and I was sent 25 pages. I didn't read. I told John, and I find out that we have to underground the lines, and it's impossible. We talked to Edison. Edison said they will never do that. It's not only the money, they will never do that. And without Edison, we cannot touch it. Now, second, I have another project right on the Cathedral Canyon, 8 units, been laid away for 8 months because nobody wants to take care of it. They get the same problem. Edison's lines got to be underground. I sent a copy of the letter to all councils, city manager, and John Corolla to see that the same problem going on and on in the whole city. It's not John's problem. It's not planning problem. It's ordinance that got to be changed. I appreciate that. Then I told Nancy, there are a lot of lots on the same streets that needs to be sewer. Sewer for one of the lots that I bought and put in escrow, then I find out I have to pay $82,000 to get the sewer for that lot in the southern part of, right behind the Walgreens. It's impossible to do these things because they want $78,000 to bring the sewer to that one lot. I canceled the escrow. These are something that is stopping development in Cathedral City. I have a lot of developers. They want to put the money. Actually, John and Robert helped us with Robert Manera to talk about 13 lots in McCall. John was very helpful. Robert was helpful. Unfortunately, it was too late. Developers say, well, I'm not going to put $1.2 million to buy a land and end up with a situation like undergrounding. I promise that there's no underground and nothing. But developers from away, Baltimore, they don't see what's happening here. Gentlemen, ladies, please, Cathedral City is a top development city now, but we need your help. Sewer can be septic tank, they're all of them neighborhood, but for one lot, they want me to spend $70,000 to bring the sewer because it's under 180 feet. And my Edison and my other project on the Cathedral Canyon for 8 units, I had $300,000 investment there. My investor pulled it out because they have to underground the Edison's line. And Edison says no. I send a letter to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. If you could wrap up, your time has run out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no additional public comments, then we will bring it back to council. And I think I cut Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez off, so I don't know if you're ready to continue with your comments before we go to other comments.
Yes, I'm ready. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it's been freezing. So, getting back to my comments, sorry about and apologize for going right into my comments earlier. But I did talk to the developers, and I did go by and take a look at the property which they were talking about. One of the expenses that they did mention is that they do have to bring in the sewer or extend the sewer line, and as they mentioned, the cost is quite high, and they are willing to extend the sewer, from what I recall. Now, when you extend the sewer, which is going to be, I believe, I can't remember the cost exactly, but I think it was $125,000 what they first told me. But when you have a conforming property or properties that already have, that area is already developed. This is an infill lot that was divided from 4 into 3. When you divide it and you try to underground the utilities that are already there, the area is already developed, the properties that are adjacent to it will never actually underground such properties or such wires because it's very costly. Now, I think the expense exceeds what the profit could be, and those property or that type of property will never be developed unless we actually amend or do something with our ordinance. Now, there's a few other properties within our city that we have to try to work and also update our ordinance. It is very costly for developers, and they cannot make money when we, or not we, but the ordinance dictates that they must underground utilities such as this one. So I believe that we do have to work with these developers and amend or revise the ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Not muted.
Sorry about that. All right, we're ready on comments. And who else has comments? Councilmember Ross.
Thank you again for the presentation, Director Corella, and thank you to our 2 public speakers. I think they're between a rock and a hard place, but so is the city. We have rules that have to be followed, and the only way you change them is if you actually want to change ordinances, and that's not overnight. So there is no wonderful solution for the developer because they don't really want to wait months and months for ordinance changes. But at the same time, we can't snap our fingers and change things. But I do want to point out a few observations I have. The other properties that were that Director Corella put forward as comparisons are, for the most part, undergrounding the property directly in front of their own property, with the exception of Tower Market that is bringing the low lines across the street, across one intersection. They aren't bringing it from the next busy street over. And they're only just doing what's right in front of their property. And as far as Mountain View Estates go, they're really only doing just exactly what's in front of their property. So when you talk about this property, in order to actually underground it to meet the ordinance, to meet what Southern California Edison says would be the minimum, Director Corella nailed it. It's going to be about $250,000. It looks like, if you said it was about $30,000 per residential lot. That's about what it would figure out to be. That's not developable, if that's even a word. So, I mean, that seems like that's pretty much off the table, that they wouldn't be able to afford to do that and still be able to develop that property. The second option is depositing that money into an account. But as both Director Corella and City Manager McClendon said, and I agree, I don't think that we should be participating in moot activities. We shouldn't just pretend that, we're going to do something with money, knowing in advance that we aren't going to do that. That doesn't seem like that's a prudent a way for us to move forward. So to me, it seems like the third and lastly, I also don't like the idea of throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying to the city, well, you guys just decide when you want to change the rules and when you don't. I think that's too much of a burden to put upon them. It's too much heat in their kitchen, and I don't think that that's fair for them. So when I analyze that personally, it seems like to me, and I'd love to hear the other city council members' observations, it seems to me that the answer is an ordinance change. And that's pretty much where, I've come at it from every angle I could think of. And there is no quality answer other than to make a fundamental change. And maybe that is, and I'm going to come back to you, John, maybe that is changing that the local line extends to more than 200 feet and closer to the 600 feet that we have for a community line, or that we have some residential, I don't know, some change in how the verbiage is about residential versus Main Street, or particularly local lines versus community. So also the two examples Director Corella gave for the other two properties, those are both community lines. Those are both right-of-ways, right on the busy street. We're not talking about undergrounding behind the properties with these local lines, like is pertinent in this particular situation. So maybe some better delineation between how we're going to treat a local in a community, or tweaking the ordinance a little bit. But what's happening isn't fair. And I don't think the three solutions that were offered tonight, I don't think any one of them is the golden ticket.
All right, thank you. Other comments?
I just had a comment that, so if it's not, if the developer, if the cost is so prohibitive that he's not going to go forward with this, that's a potential situation, that the cost of undergrounding this, it's so exorbitant that he's going to abandon the project because he's not going to make any money on it. This is not a non-profit organization. He wants to make a profit on these homes. And it's going to be the same situation for anybody else going forward. If he abandons the project, nobody else is going to come in because the cost is so prohibitive. That's correct. That's what we're saying. And so then we're saying that the ordinance, in 1990, the whole point was to beautify the city and underground utility lines as it became available and became, so there were assessment districts were formed, and, it goes on and on. But this is a situation where there's a mature neighborhood. I went out there and I was just looking at my pictures. So all the lines are not underground, and we're saying that they're never going to be, because the cost of that is exorbitant. So this is going to just sit there, whether this developer develop it or not, but it's just going to sit there because nobody else is going to touch it either. So that's what our dilemma is. Is that what I'm all understanding? I want to make sure
Yes.
I know what the heck we're talking about here. Okay, I got it.
You hit it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm all fired up.
Yeah. So I think the problem lies, how do we tweak it? I have to agree with Council Member Ross that the three options are not all, 100%, but it's a difficult situation. And you're right, we just can't switch it overnight, and we can't leave the burden on staff to just create something and say, okay, well, we'll just waive the charges. So, John, what does it cost without going underground? Would you know what the cost would be to get electricity on the property?
They would probably just get a drop off the pole, but the requirement from us is that it would be an underground feed to the house, residential house. So you wouldn't have an additional service line. Bottom line, I don't know the cost.
Okay.
Provided cost. And I just want to point out, just throwing this out, the reason the developer is putting the sewer in is not because they're doing it because they want to. Our ordinance requires them to do it.
It's mandated. It's state mandated too.
The ordinance helps us in a lot of ways. So that's all.
Yeah. So
the
if
state mandates. Oops. Sorry, go ahead.
One at a time. Who needs to go first? Wave your hand.
Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yes. Is the sewer, if the sewer is available with an assurance distance 250 feet, I believe it is, you must hook up to the sewer. That's one of the ordinances. But yes, everyone is right. This is a mature area, it's been developed. And one of the things is time is of the essence when it comes to development and real estate. So whatever we can do to help these developers develop this property, we should. Otherwise, this property will sit vacant for many years to come because nobody's going to develop, nobody's going to touch it, nobody's going to touch it, nobody's going to develop it. And also the cost to bring electricity to those properties actually is very insignificant. It's probably $200 per property, unless they have to install a what is it called? What is it called? A transformer. So if they have to install a transformer, then the cost goes up. But that's up to the developer. They would have to just pay Edison, and that will be it. But it's easy for them to do it. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I've heard a couple terms tonight. Mature property or mature area. I think that's where we could start with this code rewrite in certain cases where matured properties are, because this is a unique case. There's probably going to be a couple more coming out like this in the future. So I think if we could change it where there's an exception, a matured case. I think start with that. I don't, I'm not really good at creating a code here, but the problem is mature areas, there should be an exception for that. So I think if we start with that, and as far as in lieu of money, I don't, if it's not going to happen in that area, I don't see why the developer, even though other developers have to pay it, that money's used somewhere else. If it's for that area, then it's for that area. It should be used there. But I don't really have an answer. This is very difficult to create something. Maybe the city attorney has a thought to throw him in here. He's been pretty quiet on this, but we have to be, civic minded that these developers do want to build up in our city, and we have to help them get there. But we have to be fair about it. So I think mature areas is a start where we can start rewriting this code.
So let me jump in. I haven't really offered an opinion here. I was going to let everybody else go, but we're kind of a couple of rounds in. So, so this is very interesting, and there's it certainly is an issue that does not make sense. So I think, to me, it's pretty obvious, and what I've heard from everybody is we all realize we need to change it. But I don't want to totally lose sight, and I'm not really hearing from my peers that you want to lose sight in the fact that it's really beneficial to the city, to the residents, to the environment, to move towards undergrounding lines where we can, underground lines. So I'm glad to hear that we're not just abandoning that, because I think that has a lot of value, and I think all of us realize that it has a lot of value. But this is I'm just going to go with the number one case. I know there's been another case thrown in here, but I think this is a good example, and I'm glad it was brought forward, that the ordinance does not make sense in all circumstances. So now what can be done to address that, because we don't want to undo it or make it so loose that it's not going to apply anywhere, or we're not going to have undergrounding anywhere, or we're going to set up a situation where there's ways to protest it or finagle around it, or as has been talked about, pressure staff or pressure council to be making one-on exceptions. And that's why I hesitate even to bring in, it's part of the discussion is for this example, but I hate to even bring in the sewer costs or other costs into this, because I don't think we're looking at making a law change that really just benefits this one development. We're looking at making a change that makes sense for everybody. So that's where it's tricky. So I don't know whether we've actually heard enough. We heard enough about this particular case, but I don't know if we've actually heard enough about, what our authority is and some other ideas. And maybe that's what this is here tonight for us to kind of hear. I frankly, if we've required some developers to make these kind of changes, And now we're going to make exceptions. I'm a little more of a fan of, well, if we can't underground lines here because it doesn't make sense, it's a mature area and these other properties would have to be involved and there's no incentive for them to be involved. I'm a little bit of a fan of having some type of a fund that says, well, let's put some money in this fund. And when we get maybe to the third project down or to someplace that's scenic, that the city council then says, you know, let's use that money and underground some lines here, because we can't, it's not fair to try to make every individual development do it, but they should be able to pay some money so that at least down the road we get some underground lines. I kind of equate it to, you know, you have a requirement that you build a development and you have so much park acreage that goes to it. Well, in your development right there, you might not have space, or it might not pencil out to put a park, but you know, we can make an arrangement where you pay into a fund and then you buy land somewhere else and you build a park there. It's still a benefit for the city, even though it didn't occur right there. Now, that even gets a little mushy, because should they have to pay the whole cost because they're not getting the benefit of the undergrounded lines? They're not getting the nice view. They're not getting the safety issues with their own property. So, you know, that may make it so that that's not a good answer, but I wouldn't necessarily throw that out, because that might be part of a solution, that if they're relieved of this duty, although it would have to be under very special circumstances, like you're saying, in a mature area, that there may be some benefit that goes back to the public in general, because then there is some funding set aside so that we can get some undergrounding going. So that's just, I wouldn't dismiss that right up front, because I think there is some value, or possibly some value as a compromise in there. That's my 2 cents. So I see, Charlie, you're waving your hand. So
I always look for ways to try to figure, because it's not fair to expect you all to come up with an answer on something this complicated, you know, from the dais. So I'm thinking of, having heard the discussion, what kind of things could we go back and craft that we could apply in a fair and uniform manner to circumstances, so that nobody's having to make a subjective judgment call, but that we apply these criteria and determine that instead of doing it, you either pay into a fund or do something else. So here's what I'm thinking we could take a look at. First of all, limiting the exceptions to just residential neighborhoods where more than X% of the lots are already developed. And we can talk and figure that out. So that would eliminate new development from trying to ask for a waiver, or, you know, where there's plenty of lots to spread it across. Because Mountain View Estates is a good example. One of the reasons why when that went to Planning Commission, they didn't balk at the undergrounding requirement, is there was enough lots to spread that cost over so that you could still make money. So I think we would need to look at circumstances where it's an already developed area, more than X% of the lots are already developed, and it's something that falls between that 200 and 600 feet. So, because again, for the same reason that there's not as many lots to spread the cost over or something like that. So my suggestion is, having heard the discussion, John heard it, Eric heard it, to let us try to develop some criteria that we could apply in an objective manner that would allow for reason to prevail. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of circumstances like this, because already when lots develop individually, they're exempt from this requirement. And where there's a long stretch of lots, it isn't a problem, because there's enough lots to spread that cost over to make it work. So it's really the ones that fall in between those two categories. And I just think we need to come up with a way to define it in such a manner that everybody can understand that, and you can apply these in an objective manner and come up with the answer. So that would be my suggestion.
Can I throw one more idea in, Charlie, that's kind of down the same path that you're going, but doesn't limit it to these developed neighborhoods? and just ferret this out. And you might think about this, city attorney, something like our ordinance rules would not, how would we say this, would not exceed a percentage of the finished value. So the ordinances that would require undergrounding and require sewers and require, you know, the tap dance, whatever that is, whatever the ordinance that fits that development, those demands would not exceed a percentage of the final developed value. And that way, you know, whoever you're applying it to, whether that's a little developer in a neighborhood or a big developer doing a big major project in our city, that they're being treated equally, that it's still based on the final value of the project.
And I think Mayor and Councilmember Ross, we can consider that in our discussion. The one problem I see with something like that is it's going to be an estimate what the final value, because until a product actually sells, that's what determines what the final value.
I know, but you can kind of get an idea.
Yeah, but I think that's something we can discuss too.
Yeah, and I think that has some value, but I will say, you know, we have some areas that are out in flood zones that are way away. You don't want to open Pandora's box where you say, oh, well, that's way out there. They have to build a road. They have to control flooding. They have to do so. They don't have to run sewers or do any undergrounding because they've already gone over their costs. You know, that's where I think you have to you don't want to open Pandora's box there. So, because, you know, sometimes development does take a while, and we do want to have smart development, and we want to have good quality projects in there. And sometimes it's just, some of you guys are, especially in Mayor Pro Tem, you know that sometimes a parcel or an area it's not ready for development right now. There are other areas that need to be developed first, and then and we'll get there. So I do think we need to watch that we don't set ourselves up where you have some areas, say, that have underground, or some areas that have sewer and some don't. And then later people say, well, how come that area doesn't have, this area has underground and the undergrounded electrical, this one doesn't, why not? And we come back and say, oh, well, because they had to do sewer and that one already had sewer. And then, you know, 20 years from now, they're going to say, well, what would that crazy council do? You know, why would they do that? You know, they needed to wait and to work with the developers. And so all of the necessary things could be finished. So, you know, I think we need to be careful that we don't completely rewrite the rules and then end up in that type of a situation. But there definitely needs to be work done. So thank you, Charlie. Did you have something more, Councilmember Lamb?
I did. I just wanted to make, so we're saying the bottom line is that this conversation and the consideration of amending an ordinance or redo whatever, it was triggered because the developer moved from 2 houses to 3 houses.
And needed to get an adjustment and an entitlement to do that, is my understanding. So then the rules got applied and it went to the planning commission. And otherwise, if they had just built on 2 lots that were already entitled, then they wouldn't have had to gone through that process.
Yeah, so there's that responsibility on the developer too. So we're considering changing an ordinance based on this specific incident, and that's what I wonder about that.
Yeah, and
I hear what Charlie's saying as far as an unintended consequence of the ordinance, and now we've got this real life issue. But I also see lots of parts to it.
And I think what I'm hearing is that many of us agree with you that we shouldn't be making ordinance changes just one-fers, because it addresses this problem. But if you have something that comes forward that's a good example of a problem that likely exists all over the place, and that's where I look at this as, yeah, it's come forward as an example of something that is an issue. But that's why I say I don't necessarily look at factors like, well, they also have to do sewer, to me that's okay, but what does that have to do with this undergrounding question? We really need to address the underground question for all parcels that are similarly situated. So, yeah.
And I think if I may, Mayor, I think it's going to be possible to develop some criteria that are going to be hard to meet so that it's not going to be just a carte blanche for anybody to avoid the undergrounding requirement, that it'll be hard to meet, but there may be circumstances where it's warranted. And I think that's what we need to look for.
Great.
Mayor, I think it's a good idea to identify if there's any other lots within our city that might be facing the same issues. And I think Charlie also summarized this pretty well. And I think the ideas all together that everyone has talked about are great ideas to be able to help not just this developer, but possibly if a small number of other developers or other property owners that have the same issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we have enough that the city manager has and the city engineer and have enough to go forward on. And I thank everyone for their comments. It's always hard when we get these things that aren't very clear or very complicated, but I think we have enough or said enough.
I think we do have some direction, Mayor. This is going to be a little bit complicated, so we'll do our best to have something ready by your next meeting, but it may take 2 meetings to get to that.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be right. It needs to, we don't want it to extend forever, but it needs to address all of these issues. So, yeah. All right, thank you. With that, let's move on to our next legislative item, item 8, the Ramon Road and Cathedral Village intersection emergency traffic signal wire pole. City manager.
Yeah, and this is a pretty straightforward one. I authorized an emergency repair to this intersection back in early December. It was going to be a month till we had our next meeting. And this was an intersection that was failing repeatedly. And it's on a fairly important corridor, the Ramon Road corridor. And I just didn't think we could wait and just let it keep failing. So now we're asking for you to ratify basically that authorization. And John will go through very briefly some of the details on this.
Thank you, Charlie. And I heard the word briefly. There's a side point to this. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, as introduced, the intersection that's a perfect example, which we did the repair at, is Village Drive, Cathedral Village. And anyone that's familiar with that location knows that if you go into the Stater Brothers, that's usually one of the entrance or exits. So you go Bank America being here, tire store over here. That's the intersection in question. And just to let you know that we get regular maintenance on the things we can see, touch, feel, the above ground stuff, the lanterns, the post, pedestrian call boxes, all those get immediate attention when they fail. The challenge we have is we don't get regular maintenance on the conduit, which a lot of these conduits in the old days were put in as steel conduits, and we know what happens after 20, 40 years. The wires and then the detector loops that are put in the roadway. Fortunately, with our HSIP cycle programs, the detector loops will go away because we're going to go completely to video and radar type systems. In this case, starting last year, and this signal was put in 97, so we're talking about a 24-year-old signal, 24-year-old signal with wiring. The wires started failing back in March of 2020. It started continual failing over time. We had 5 call outs due to signal flash or blackouts. Short circuit grounding wire, they came out on December 8th and did a bandage, what I call a bandage job, jumper job. It failed again, December 9th, we called them out again, and the tech basically said, I've jumped it. I am not guaranteeing this. You need to repull the wires. Excuse me. So they are our on-call traffic signal maintenance contractor, that's Siemens. He gave me a quote based on his prices in the on-call contract. And so in talking to public works staff, there was an urgency. I went and talked to the city manager. We concurred, and I authorized them to complete it ASAP. And the repair was done on the 14th. And mind you, just as an overall, our HSIP cycle program, you will see us coming forward with details because we're finding that we're having a significant challenge with the signal and wiring at other signals in the city. That's something to be presented to you later with the facts. In this case, we did this, we're requesting as in the staff report and after effect approval. And the funding will come out of the available traffic safety funds. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions of the city manager or the city engineer? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, can you tell me if you know that if this conduit was damaged due to any work that was completed or has been completed on Ramon Road recently for the project, which is Suniva?
Now, in this case, we didn't find that conduit was damaged. We don't even know the state of the conduit. We crossed our fingers. They pulled the wires out. They fish taped a new wire in and pulled the new wires in. So the damage wasn't due to any specific instance. It was a deterioration in general. And I didn't point out in there that we have continual challenges with wiring because ants love it. Fire ants, it's very known that they actually, something in the insulation of the wires, and vermin in our boxes. Rodents, gophers, things like that in our above ground boxes too also eat the wiring and gnaw on it, eat the insulation, I should say. So that's where the hereby the challenge lies. So we don't know if there's an identified pinpoint damage to that. It was an overall deterioration of all the wire.
Now, have you seen this issue, or do you foresee any other signals needing to have the same type of rewiring problem?
Yes, and I've spoken to the city manager. I don't want to belabor this approval with that. I'll be coming back to you with some other challenges we're having in being able to complete our HSIP Cycle 8 program, where we contracted a contractor to work on 20 intersections to provide new detection equipment and preemption equipment. A lot of it requires pulling wires in. They've gone out to the very first one. They're going out to all the other of the 20 intersections. And right off the bat, they've identified the first 2 locations where conduit is actually not even existent. And they don't know if they can pull the wires. So we're going to do it case by case, but I'll be presenting that to you at a later council meeting. And it's inherent. A lot of our signals are 40 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old plus. And once again, something we can't see and maintain.
Thank you, John.
It is our 40th anniversary this year.
Yeah, unfortunately for infrastructure, that takes its toll.
All right, other questions? All right, do we have any public comment on this? If you're watching on the public and you wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand or dial *9.
I see no hands, Mayor.
All right, back to council for any other additional questions or comments. I think Mayor Pro Tem, for me, you hit it right on the head, and John, this seems like a no-brainer. We needed to fix it. We move forward, we fix it. But then the question comes, is this just the tip of the iceberg, the first one to hit the Titanic here? And we've got, many, many more coming down the road. And if so, should we be doing the one for fixes, or do we need to put together a big plan to address all these and try to get some economy of scale going? So I'm sure I don't want to preview what you said you're going to cover, but I think that's what we're all kind of hearing may be coming, something of that nature. Is that correct?
Yes, we are going to come back with a comprehensive view of that. And that has been brought to the forefront because of the HSIP grant. And I'm hoping we can pull this up and get some economies of scale on it. But we just don't have the data yet to answer that question.
That's very fair. All right, any other discussion, or is somebody ready to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right.
I move to approve the emergency traffic signal wire pull at the intersection of Ramon Road and Cathedral Village in the amount of $26,034.22 and authorize the city manager to approve the purchase order for payment.
Excellent. Motion by Councilmember Lamb. I heard Councilmember Carnevale. Was that a second?
I'll second. Yes.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ross,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Carnevale,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez,
Yes.
Mayor Gregory.
Yes.
Motion carries, all ayes.
All right. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 6I, which is our update on emergency actions related to COVID-19. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, and I'll try not to belabor this. I've got some good news, and of course, we're all aware of the bad news that's going on with the surge that we're seeing in cases, which is affecting the hospitals as well as really everything in our community right now. So on the good news front, the fire department has been working with county and state officials, and the fire department has become registered with the California Immunization Registry, which will allow us to work towards becoming a location for administering the vaccines to eligible people. Tomorrow, which I got this yesterday, so that was today, they were sending us a link to enroll in the CalVac system. And we are moving through the necessary requirements to be able to do that. We have appointed Battalion Chief Williams. He'll be our Chief Medical Officer for this. Battalion Chief Hauser will be the alternate. Station 410 will be the application site, which can be changed based on our needs and logistics as we work through this. I've been talking closely with Chief Muir on this. And Commander Luna is tied in with them so that we can coordinate the process of getting vaccinations in the police department as well. We have our fire personnel who opted to receive the vaccine have all done that at this point. That's both the office people and the paramedics who are treating people. So we've made progress in that. I think that's all good. And it is our intent to move full speed ahead on getting the necessary approvals and start offering that as soon as we cross all the boxes there. We have noticed in December, I got data really for over the last year in terms of the calls for service that the fire department has received. December was the highest month of the year. And so that's a reflection of what they're seeing in terms of calls for service related to COVID. And also the patients that they're dealing with that are known to be positive has risen to a much higher percentage than what they had seen in the past. So our troops on the ground are seeing, exactly what you're reading about in the newspaper, exactly what you're seeing on the television, that there's just a higher percentage of people that we're dealing with that are positive. I feel we're very fortunate. And it's not just luck, it's because they're following all the proper protocols. But I think we're very fortunate that we haven't had any greater outbreaks than what we've seen among our own personnel in the fire service. Actually, within the city, elsewhere, we're in pretty good shape right now. A month ago, I had to crack down and put some stricter measures in place in City Hall. We were seeing a lot of cases there. We're clear among City Hall personnel right now. We still have a few in police that are out, mostly due to not being sick themselves, but having been exposed and going through their quarantine period. But that too is much better than it was a few weeks ago. Now, I'm not naive though. I know that can change at any time, but we're really emphasizing to follow the protocols, to do your meetings by Zoom, to stay in your office by yourself, otherwise to have a mask on and everything like that. So I feel like, we're doing what's prudent to protect our personnel in that regard. Let me just show you before I quit the most recent cases. This is my graph of cases in Cathedral City. And if you remember back in July, when we were looking at this peak right here, if you can see my cursor. We thought that was horrible. And, you know, it took up the whole graph to see that. Now that hardly even registers as a blip compared to what we've seen really since early December. We have come down a little bit off of the peak. Our very highest day in terms of the 7-day average of new cases was December 23rd. We have come down off of that, but I'm certainly not ready to declare the surge over at this point. So I guess I would say I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe we've seen the worst, but we still have to, not only us at the city, but everyone in our community has to really do what they can to protect ourselves and to avoid the situations that we know help spread this. And if I can go down a little bit lower here, let me see. I did a new, this is our deaths by month. And as horrendous as the data has been recently, that's one area where we're not quite as bad as we were back in July, but December is our second highest month. And I think really the only difference as I look at the data between our death rate in July and now in December is that it has spread more broadly to a younger population that maybe help keeping the mortality rate lower, but you know, that's still terrible and tragic. And you know, I can speak from personal experience. My father just died from COVID in Arizona, so I know the effect that it has on the elderly population, and we need to protect everybody. So beyond that, unless you have any specific questions, I think we are taking the steps that are necessary to protect our employees. I think we are putting out the information that is necessary to help the general population to make good decisions about what they do. And we are going to be very active in trying to get as many people vaccinated as possible, which probably is the ultimate answer here. So unless there's any questions, that ends my presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. City Manager. And of course, our deepest condolences from the entire council on your personal loss. But thank you for sharing it, because I think it's important for people to remember that we're not just talking about numbers on charts, that we're talking about real people and real lives. And it really has affected many, many people. And there are many, many sad stories about people with multiple family members that have been affected, or even where, you know, children have no parents because both parents passed from COVID, and it really is terrible. But thank you for sharing that, you know, your personal story, and hopefully that does make impact to those that hear it. And I know personally, I'm very encouraged to hear that we're doing everything we can to be ready to vaccinate, because, you know, you hear about Walgreens and CVS may be doing vaccinations, and dentists and others, but I'm sure they're all going to be full for a while, which is a good thing. But we're fortunate here in Cathedral City that we are in the situation where we have our own medical staff in the fire department. We're very proud of them and very happy to have them. And you know, we so much appreciate that this is not something that we could have foreseen, but in this circumstance, they're able to provide even more vital service on top of what they already do. So I see our fire chief is on the line, and I know I want to express to him and his crews how much we appreciate all you're doing. This is gotta be, I mean, you're all very brave, but this has got to be very scary to be facing this every day, and to be putting up with the issues of not being able to get people in the hospital in time. And, you know, and I'm sure there's many, many stories. I don't want to hear them because it makes me very sad, but we're very proud of you and all the work that you do, and keep up the good work. Do we have council comments or questions?
I just want to also express my condolences to Charlie with his loss, and also his husband, Brian, for his loss. Yeah. Thank you.
Very nice. I see we do have one member of the public. If that member of the public wants to make a comment, please raise your hand at this time.
I see no hands here.
All right, so it's back to council. If anybody else has any comments or questions. All right. Well, thank you, Charlie. Keep up the good work, and please keep us apprised if you need anything from the council to, keep the community safe and prepared. I know that we're willing and there to back whatever we can do. So, all right. With that, we have no closed session item, or our item that we had, we already took care of. It's already been reported. So we are ready, unless anybody has anything for the good of the cause, to adjourn our meeting to our next meeting, which will be in 2 weeks on the 27th. And then shortly after that, we'll be having a goal setting session still scheduled for the 30th. So we're going to have a busy end of the month. But everyone take care, and we'll see you then.
Take
Thank
care
you.
of yourselves.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
We're adjourned.